What's up, Earthrockers? It's time to talk about a new game. I'm finally done with Harmony of Dissonance. It took me a lot longer to get through with it than I thought. But now we're moving on to a game that everybody loves. This is kind of like Symphony of the Night. It's very highly regarded. Aria of Sorrow. It also kind of like Symphony of the Night. I do like this game, but I have some problems with it. I have some problems with it that I don't have with Harmony, and that I don't have with Symphony of the with Symphony. I guess I should talk a little bit about the storyline in that Aria of Sorrow has more of a storyline than any game before it. I don't know if this is going to be a continuing trend, and I'm frankly not quite sure how I feel about it. One of my Before I get too big here, I'm just gonna stick with talking about the game for now. So, the plot, as you may have seen if you read that little text crawl. If not, I'll summarize it. There's a spooky eclipse that's appeared over Japan. A European exchange student named Soma Cruz is going to the shrine to visit his childhood friend who works there. And he disappears, and he's going to end up inside Dracula's castle with his childhood best friend. There they are. And what follows is a lot of talking. There's a lot of talking at the start of Aria of Sorrow, and then there's more talking as the game continues. The first part of the game has this frustrating habit of, like, you keep running into, like, new characters, and then there's, like, 5 of them, and then they talk at you every time you meet a new one. And I think that you could probably excise half of the cast of this game, and I do not think it would make much of a difference. This mysterious black-haired fellow introduces himself as Aracado. You can maybe figure out for yourself who this guy actually is. But I'm getting very, like, specific at the very start, and I'm not, and I feel like I should take a step back a little bit. Aria of Sorrow is a good game. Aria of Sorrow is another Metroidvania-style game. It's similar to Symphony of the Night in that you're playing as a white-haired guy with a sword, instead of a white-haired guy with a whip, which is what you were in Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance. And it has a new system. A new gameplay system. Which is what the dude in the suit is going to exhaustively explain for a minute here. I'll explain it in my own words. Basically, every time you kill an enemy, they have a chance to drop their soul, and the enemy's soul gives you a new ability. There's 3 kinds of souls. There are red souls, which give you, like, attacks that you activate by hitting up and B, basically like different sub-weapons. There are blue souls, which are sometimes exploration tools, but more often than not, like, miscellaneous, like, I don't know, the blue souls are weird. Blue souls do a lot of different things. They're usually like movement tools, or like defensive things. And then yellow souls are passive buffs that buff your stats, or buff your anything else. This strange little moment here was me stopping and starting again, so that way if I died, I wouldn't have to go and watch all that cutscene shit again. I could just start over from the moment when gameplay started. Fortunately, I didn't ever have to do that. I didn't die in this whole run. Hence the title. This is a no items run, because if you start the game off and name yourself no use or no use, you actually can't use any healing items. This is kind of my way of making the game more interesting, because Aria of Sorrow is definitely harder than Harmony of Dissonance, and it's definitely harder than Symphony of the Night, but nonetheless, my philosophy on healing items in games like this is that I think they provide too much of a safety cushion, wherein it's very easy if you play these games without any kind of restrictions on your item usage to not really have to learn any of the fights and just kind of get into slugfests with all the bosses and take a bunch of damage and then just heal it back up with potions and not ever have to engage too deeply with the mechanics. So that's the reason why I did that with Harmony of Dissonance. That's the reason why I'm doing that here. The soul system is the source of... One thing I should say, well, I'll say what I like about the soul system. What I like about the soul system is that it sort of consolidates the magic and sub-weapon systems that were present in Circle of the Moon and in Harmony of Dissonance, and honestly in Symphony of the Night, because all of those systems kind of had the same problem, which is that they were kind of redundant. I love the magic system in Harmony of Dissonance. Let me just make that absolutely clear. I don't like the way the DSS system was implemented in Circle of the Moon, but I do also like the DSS system in Circle of the Moon. But both of the systems have the same problem, which is that the GBA sort of struggles to smoothly implement them because it just doesn't have that many buttons. It's like swapping back and forth between magic and sub-weapons in Harmony of Dissonance involves like a weird button combo. You have to like down and then L and R, and it's so strange that the first time I played Harmony of Dissonance, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could like swap between spell books or like swap between sub-weapons and spells through button input combos. I mean, if I'd read the instruction book, if I had an instruction booklet, then I guess I would have known that, but the point is that it's like the systems are a little bit too complicated for what the game can actually can naturally or intuitively handle. Again, I'm not really shit-talking these systems, I'm just saying that I understand the impulse to consolidate the two into one, and that's why Soma Cruz has a magic meter and no heart count, because hearts are going to drop from candles and from enemies, but the hearts only give you magic, give you like MP, and then your MP regenerates on its own, the way that it does in the other games. So I like it. I like sort of efficiency like this. Instead of creating two systems that either are totally independent of each other, like in Circle of the Moon, or two interconnected systems in Harmony of Dissonance, they just made it one system. And again, I don't mind the Harmony of Dissonance system, but I like the impulse to simplify. So that's what I like about Aria of Sorrow. The problem with it is that Aria of Sorrow brings back grinding, or not grinding, but farming, which Circle of the Moon had introduced, essentially, because farming was never really necessary in Symphony of the Night. Circle of the Moon introduced grinding, or farming, I should say. I guess I should explain what the difference is. In my mind, grinding is like grinding for levels. Farming is farming for drops, and what you do in Aria of Sorrow is farming, not grinding. Harmony of Dissonance got rid of grinding. Aria of Sorrow, for some fucking reason, decided that it would incentivize... It would bring it back. And I'm gonna wait a little bit to talk about that, because that's not gonna really become relevant until later in the game. But I'm just giving my sort of basic thoughts on the game and on its central systems. So I think the Soul system is creative, and I think that it's interesting, but it creates an incentive to grind, because there are different tools. Almost every enemy in the game, in fact, I think every enemy in the game can drop a soul that can give you either a new ability or a new buff. And if there's a certain soul that's like the best tool for the job, then it's hard to resist the impulse to farm for it. Although Aria of Sorrow is a lot better about that than Circle of the Moon is, because there's only one soul that I'm going to farm in Aria of Sorrow specifically to deal with boss fights, and it's only going to be for one boss fight. Whereas with Circle of the Moon, the game was so vicious and difficult that it sort of that it incentivized a lot more farming to get different tools to deal with all the different problems that it puts in front of you. Aria of Sorrow is not that bad, but it is more farming than was present in Harmony of Dissonance. Another thing that I want to point out, and this is another sort of like... This is kind of a good idea. I don't really like it, but I can't say that it's wholeheartedly bad, is that Aria of Sorrow kind of dialed back on the movement that was present in Harmony of Dissonance. In Harmony of Dissonance, Juiced can zoom around the whole time, and I think one of the things that they wanted to do in Aria of Sorrow was not make you feel like you had to, like, dash everywhere if you wanted to go as fast as possible. Symphony of the Night, notoriously, infamously, it's faster to backdash around than it is to walk, because the backdash has no cooldown. Soma still has the backdash, but the backdash in Aria of Sorrow has a cooldown, which means that you can't just, like, spam it the whole time. The consequence of this, however, is that if you're used to Symphony of the Night movement, you have to sort of reprogram your brain to remember that you can't just, like, backdash as freely as you want when you're playing Aria of Sorrow. Like, in Symphony of the Night, the fact that Alucard could backdash so fast and could backdash multiple times with no cooldown meant that you could play a lot more aggressively and a lot less cautiously, but the fact that Soma can only backdash once and then he has to wait a little bit to backdash again means you have to play a little bit smarter. And that can be tough to get used to. Another big difference in terms of the basic movement and the basic combat of this game and versus Symphony of the Night is that Soma has a sword, like Alucard had a sword, but when Alucard swings his sword, there is there's like an overhand component to it where it'll hit things that are directly above him and, like, in front of him. Soma does not have that technique, so fighting things in the air is a much bigger problem for Soma than it is for Alucard, or for that matter Juiced, because Juiced's whip swing also had, like, a ahead of him and above him sort of component to it. So those are the basic differences. How do I feel about these differences? Well, they were very annoying while I started playing the game, because once I started playing the game and I was like, okay, I'm a white-haired dude with a sword, I was in full, like, Symphony of the Night mode. I was trying to play the game like Symphony of the Night, and you can't quite do that. Look, it's this guy. It's character number 2, who is going to talk at us for a long time about more exposition. This conversation's actually kind of strange. I guess this is in keeping with the concept of... So, well, that's such a strange line, too. Does, like, the criminal underworld know about Dracula? What does he mean by the underworld? That line is also strange, because apparently it wasn't leaked to the outside world, because if it was, then wouldn't people know about it? Because this guy says he's a missionary with the church, so he knows about it, but then he says it was leaked to the outside world. I don't know what he means by that. This is also weird. This is a weird element of the storyline, of the backstory that I'm going to talk about. Yeah, and Soma Cruz just knows who Nostradamus is, and knows about the 1999 prophecy. I don't know, I'm not European. Maybe everybody in Europe knows about Nostradamus. Aria of Sorrow does do something interesting that I think is would have been appreciated in the other games, which is that it tries to find a way to not make Dracula the bad guy. Because Dracula does not show up in this game. Dracula doesn't, like, get resurrected at the last second and say, haha, it's me, Dracula, and then you fight him. Which is what you might expect. Yeah, it's one of the weirder aspects of the additions to the storyline that Aria of Sorrow made is that they... this game takes place in 2035, and they established that Dracula died, like, permanently in 1999. And if you're not familiar with the series, you might think that references, like, one of the like, N64 games that I haven't played, or, like, maybe another game in the series, or, like, a game that's going to come out later. But the events of 1999 have actually never been depicted in any Castlevania game. So it creates this odd situation. I mean, it's possible that they intended to depict those events in a later game, and the series just died before they could. But I don't really know. And it's frankly a little bit irritating to me, because something that I've mentioned in previous videos about post-Symphony of the Night Castlevania games is how definitive the ending of Symphony of the Night is, especially relative to Dracula's character, where Dracula, at the end of Symphony of the Night, Dracula literally says, maybe I was wrong. He says, oh, my wife, who was like the whole reason I was so mad at humanity, told me to forgive them. He confronts his son one last time. It's such a perfect ending to his character. So for Aria of Sorrow to come along and say, no, actually, he died for real 200 years later, and then to never show the events of that, and then to never even pay that off with a depiction of those events, is frankly pretty strange. And I think it's a completely... there's no reason that I can think of why it should be in the game. Like, at the end of Aria of Sorrow, there's nothing about the storyline that necessitates that Dracula's death must have been 40 years ago instead of, like 240 years ago. There's no reason he couldn't have just died in 1797 when Symphony of the Night happens. So, I don't quite know what they were going for there. It seems like maybe they were trying to set up a future game with those events, but then, like, if you look at the rest of the DS games and if you look at the rest of the DS games, like, they released 3 games on DS, so they had ample opportunity to depict the 1999 events if they wanted to. Somebody did actually ask Iga about like that and about why they didn't do that, and he basically said that he couldn't really talk about it because he's not in charge of Castlevania. Iga's the I don't remember his full name, something Igarashi. He's basically like the post Symphony of the Night Castlevania like storyline guy. And I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's the simplest way that I can convey it. And somebody asked him about the whole 1999 thing, and like, why was that never depicted? And he basically said that he couldn't say anything about it because he's not in charge of Castlevania anymore, and he doesn't want to influence, on the off chance if Konami ever decides they want to make another one of these games and somebody feels like they want to cover those events, he didn't want to like say anything that he thought might influence that process because it's not up to him anymore. So that's got to be kind of a frustrating position to be in as a storyline guy, as like a developer. But I guess that's just what he felt like he had to say. So if you're curious about the whole 1999 thing, that's what that's about. Anyway, this is the first part of the game. This is that part of the game that I've talked about before in other Castlevania, Metroidvania videos. It's like the dead zone before you get the double jump, which always feels kind of bad. And I think it stretches on for a little bit longer in Aria of Sorrow than I would like. What's interesting is that you go to the chapel pretty early in Aria of Sorrow. Usually the chapel is like a later type thing, but... Well, the chapel's pretty early in Symphony of the Night, but it's not like the second place you go to, literally. I'll be using the skeleton, bone, soul for a long time. I don't really remember what I end up using for most of the game. Like in my Harmony of Dissonance tier list video, my way too long, that was an accident. I did not mean to fall down there, so I accidentally respawned everything that I just spent all my MP killing, which kind of sucks, but oh well. In my Harmony of Dissonance tier list video, I talked about what makes a good sub-weapon. And I said what makes a good sub-weapon is, does it increase your range of attack? And the skeleton spear that you get at the very start of the game, that's the sub-weapon that I started off with, does a very good job of fulfilling that requirement. It's very long range. It's exactly what you want if you're playing a Symphony of the Night style game where you have a short, fast sword weapon. You want something that's going to extend your range. And early in the game, you also want something that'll do a lot of damage, which is why I was throwing grenades at those turrets earlier. Yeah, grenades in a Castlevania game. This takes place in 2035, remember? Again, I don't think there's any particular reason it has to take place in 2035. The modern technology doesn't have any impact on the storyline. And here, I think I'm gonna No, not yet. There's going to be a little cut here because I'm going to farm the big skull guy up ahead for a soul that I'm going to use for the Grim Reaper fight later on. And this is the only soul that I'm going to farm specifically to deal with boss fights. It's not the only soul that I'm going to farm, period, but it's the only soul that I'm going to farm for a boss fight. There are other souls that you need to farm for Symphony of the Night, not Symphony of the Night, Aria of Sorrow, which again I don't really approve of. Yeah, whenever you see that shit happens, that shit happening, that means that I'm stopping and starting again. Giant Ghost Soul, I got it. Yeah, there's nothing fun about farming. Like, there's no other way for me really to put it besides that. Because the thing is that you need to farm in Aria of Sorrow to get the best ending. Because you need 3 specific souls when you go in and fight the... what could be the final boss if you get the worst ending. Or if you get, like, the... I don't know what you would call it. There's 3 endings, but there's really only 2 endings. Because the intermediate ending is kind of, like, weird. Which I'll talk about when we get to it, but... But you need to farm to get the best ending, is what I'm saying. Okay, so here's the first boss in the game, the Manticore, which is, in my opinion, like one of the fucking hardest bosses in the whole game. Because that's why. It's so hard to safely approach him and do, like, more than one, like, swing at a time of damage on him. Because the fireball comes out super fast, there's not that really much warning before he does it. And it's not just about, like, getting distance on the fireball, it's getting distance on the fireball and jumping over it. And, like, I'm not playing super well here, to be fair. Like, but it seems like a strangely, it's a very demanding boss fight to have at the start of the game. It's so weird to me that it's as punishing as it is. I mean, I should be, I mean, I like it. I like the fact that the game is hard. Because that's one of the things about Castlevania games that I appreciate. I think that's one of the things that makes Castlevania games, is a certain level of difficulty. But usually the difficulty ramps up a little bit before you get thrown right into, like, the meat grinder. But in this game, it's kind of the opposite, and that's kind of an RPG problem, where the Manticore is basically the hardest boss in the whole game, and well, almost the hardest boss in the whole game, and then there's nothing else really that matches it in terms of its difficulty until much later, or maybe ever, I would say, honestly, because there are bosses that are, like, similarly mechanically demanding, but, well. I'm trying to decide if some of the later bosses I'm thinking about are harder than the Manticore. I don't know, it's not usually, like... It's not usually boss fights that are gonna be... Like, the most dangerous parts of the whole game mostly involve spikes. Involve, like, spikes and environmental hazards. It doesn't really involve combat. Because I'm playing on hard mode. Oh good, the bone hit me. Thank God, I'm so happy. I'm playing on hard mode, and hard mode does a couple things. Hard mode reduces the amount of damage you deal by 40%, I think. And normally hard modes that increase enemies' health is something that I have a big problem with, because it's like, this was so good. I'm so glad that this dropped, because it's a long time before you get any good accessories, and that is, like, the best one you could hope to get. So that was very, very fortunate. I think that was actually the first time I'd ever seen that drop. So I didn't even know what it was until I equipped it, but then once I did equip it, I was like, okay, good. This is exactly what I want. But yeah, hard mode reduces the amount of damage you deal. Usually I have a philosophical problem with that, but once I tried it out, it didn't really feel that different. When I played Symphony of the Night on the Saturn version of Symphony of the Night has a hard mode that basically, like, doubles all enemy health, or, like, cuts your damage in half or something, whatever, functionally the same thing. And that felt like garbage, but for some reason, Aria of Sorrow hard mode did not feel as bad. I mean, obviously the damage reduction was less than it was in the Saturn hard mode, so of course it wouldn't feel as bad, but it didn't feel close to as bad. And this is like a really shitty part of the game too, because you don't get like a sword with any real range on it until like the end of this hallway. You have to do the short sword for a bit, then the rapier, and then at the end of this next hallway you get the bastard sword, I think, which is actually like a real weapon. Incidentally, the soul that I picked up and that I'm using right now, the tiny devil soul, I'm going to be using for most of the game because it's it has far horizontal range, and because it sort of homes in on things, and because it has wide like coverage, so it's really good at killing like the hunchbacks or like or anything else that's like small and hard to hit. So that's why it's good, and that's why I'm going to be using it. And it does pretty good damage. Look at that, beautiful. I should be fair when I point out the things that this game does worse than Harmony of Dissonance, and also when I point out things this game does that are better than Harmony of Dissonance. I think that the music obviously sounds way better. Composition-wise, also better, I would say. I don't think that Harmony of Dissonance's music is terrible composition-wise, but I can't, as much as I love Harmony of Dissonance, I can't deny that the music does not sound good quality-wise, whereas in Aria of Sorrow, they really went out of their way to fix that problem. And I think that the music tracks in Aria of Sorrow are kind of up and down. I think that there are some that are really fucking good, and then there are some that are so boring that it makes me want to cry. But the overall quality is better, which is worth praising. And plus, like, okay, people say Harmony of Dissonance is a rehash of Symphony of the Night. Like, I feel like I'm watching Symphony of the Night right now. Like, this game feels so much more like Symphony of the Night than Harmony of Dissonance does. Like so much more. Like, you're like backdashing all over the place. You're like jumping and swinging your sword. Another thing, actually, another small difference between the moment-to-moment gameplay of Aria of Sorrow and Symphony of the Night that I should mention, because it's actually pretty important, is that there was this thing that you could do in Symphony of the Night, and that I did a lot, where when if Alucard jumps and starts falling towards an enemy, he will, like, and you swing, he'll do like a downward swing. But the thing is that if you swing and then you hit the ground, it will like reset the cool, like I just did it there actually. Where I swung and I hit the armor and then I hit the ground, and hitting the ground like reset the swing timer like cooldown, so I was able to instantly swing again. So you can do that in this game too, kind of, but in Symphony of the Night it was easier because Alucard swung down. If he was like falling down and you swung, he would do like a downward slash, which Soma doesn't do. So again, similar to Symphony of the Night, but you're not quite as flexible and you're not quite as powerful, which I think is fine. Because one of my most frequent complaints about Symphony of the Night is the fact that it's too easy, and the fact that Alucard is basically indestructible. Oh my god, is that a hot lady? With boobs? Awooga. So this is a useless character number 3. If you're wondering what kind of last name Belnades is, it has its origins all the way back in Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, where Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse had a character who was a witch lady who could like cast spells, and the Japanese named her Cypher Fernandez. Cypher, like the cipher for a code, because she was mysterious, and then Fernandez because I suppose she was supposed to be Spanish or something. But due to the consequences of the Japanese language, Cypher Fernandez comes out as like Cypher Fernandez. It's like it comes out all like muddled. And I think that the people who localized it didn't know what they were trying to say. Somehow. Like, I guess nobody was around who spoke both languages. I don't know how these things happen, but anyway, Cypher Fernandez came out as Cypher Velnumdes in the American version of Castlevania 3, and then Valmanway turned back into Fernandez for the N64 games, and then turned into Belnumdes at some point, and now it's Belnades in Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow. So, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with these people. I don't know why they couldn't just call her Fernandez. I also don't know why she's, like, a Japanese lady with blonde hair. I mean, I guess she's half Japanese, half Spanish or something? I don't know, man. I don't know. But that's what's up with her name, if anybody was curious. Graham Jones is much more straightforward. I wonder if I should talk about the... Well, no, it's not really... Maybe, I'll probably have time to talk about it later. This thing that people like to bring up a lot, because Graham Jones is a missionary. And something that people talk about a lot in, like, Japanese games, more like, especially Japanese RPGs, is, like, the evil church trope. And I guess I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Nah, fuck it, I brought it up. I'll just talk about it now. So, like, the evil church trope that comes up a lot in Japanese games, there's a couple of reasons why that's the case. It's partially because... I mean, it's just an evil, like... an authoritative entity that's just evil and could be doing shady things, but it's also because there was a period of time in Japan when there were a lot of, like, fucked up weird cults running around, which you guys might have heard of this. One of them did a nerve gas attack in a Tokyo subway, and I think that for a while after that it was like cults and like religious fanaticism. There was like a cultural, like, there's this zeitgeist of like evil cult idea. Evil religious fanatic type idea. So I think that's partially where it comes from. That's not really the case in Aria of Sorrow. And nowhere does it say that the church is evil, although I don't know if I don't know what's going on exactly, because I guess Yoko works for the church, and I guess Graham maybe doesn't work for the church, because Graham turns out to be a bad guy. I don't know if they just said that or not. I'm like all over the place. I'm so like scatterbrained. I don't know. I feel like I'm jumping around like a jackrabbit. Oh look, it's useless character number 3. Oh yeah, this is actually kind of interesting. One of the things that you might have noticed from earlier in the game is that there was because the grenade attack that I got is the zombie soldier's soul. And they establish that in 1999, when Dracula showed up and was killed, it wasn't just a basic Castlevania scenario of a Belmont showed up and went into the castle and killed him. Apparently there was like a whole military operation where like they sent in like soldiers to Dracula's castle to try to kill him, which I guess worked eventually. Which is which actually is an interesting concept with the whole 1999 backstory. The idea that conventional methods of modern conflict resolution did not work with the whole Dracula situation. And because ultimately they do just send in the Belmont and he kills Dracula, but they tried something else first, and it presumably didn't work. So that's neat. But again, that idea doesn't go anywhere. It's not like there's any storyline significance to the fact that there are undead soldiers from 1999 in the castle. It's very, very, very strange. Oh great, it's my favorite fucking thing in the whole world. Flying enemies that do whatever the hell they want. So the whip sword that I just got is the only, or that I didn't just get, but that I got a while ago. This is the only, like, non-normal fast sword weapon. The only like, fast sword weapon that I'm going to get in the whole game. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, like, my philosophy on Castlevania weapons. So the way that Castlevania combat typically works is you have a long-range whip, and for this reason, you need to be able to maintain distance on things. So that way you can hit them and they can't hit you. That's like the basic idea of Castlevania. That's why the whip is a good, like action combat weapon, because it gives you the option to, in a game where contact with enemies damages you, it gives you a good way to maintain distance on them. Symphony of the Night changed that by giving you a shorter range instant weapon. And I should elaborate. The balancing factor for the whip's long range is the wind-up. The classic Castlevania Belmont whip wind-up, where it has long range, but you do have to get into the rhythm of using it and like the timing of the wind-up. Symphony of the Night gave you a pretty much instant attack, but the trade-off was that the range of Alucard's sword was much shorter than the whip. So in order to compensate for that, they made Alucard very mobile. They gave him the backdash, they gave him like full air control, they gave him other tools to attack at a distance if he wanted to, sub-weapons, Tetra Spirit, like magic spells, that kind of thing. But the point that I'm making is that if you don't have like a long... You need one or the other. You need an instant speed attack that lets you do damage and then gives you an opportunity to immediately react to a changing situation. Or you need a long-range weapon that lets you attack and then attack from a safe enough distance that if the situation changes or if an enemy starts telegraphing an attack, you're already a safe enough distance away from it that you can react. So it has to be one or the other. There are a couple of weapons in Symphony or in Aria of Sorrow that are stronger than whatever normal sword you can get in terms of the baseline damage, but they have worse range and or slower attack time. Some cases both. The hammer that I just picked up is a great example. Same with the broadsword. Any weapon in this game that's not like a sword that just swings like the Symphony of the Night sword is a beginner's trap, and if you use it, it will kill you, because you will attack, and then you will be stapled to the floor during the attack, and then the attack will take too long, and then you're probably gonna miss, because the range isn't long enough, and then whatever you were fighting is just gonna fucking hit you, and you just took damage for no reason. That's like the experience in Aria of Sorrow if you're not just using like the fastest sword weapon available to you. And the only reason that the whip sword is an exception to that is because it has a super long range. So you don't have the instant attack, but you can attack from a far away enough distance that you have time to react. Anyway, it's like the other thing about a weapon that could be good. It's either long range or instant swing, or like fast swing. And things like the hammer and the broadsword have neither, so they're garbage. The situation is a little bit different in Dawn of Sorrow, but I'm not going to talk about Dawn of Sorrow until I talk about Dawn of Sorrow. Because Dawn of Sorrow also has different weapon types, but they're balanced a little bit differently. In Aria of Sorrow, the broadsword's garbage and the hammer's garbage, and the battle axe, there's like an axe you can get from a minotaur. Also garbage. Garbage. The weapon progression in Aria of Sorrow is kind of strange in the first place, where I'm gonna get the best weapon in the game. Well, it's hard to describe until we get it. So I guess I'll just wait to talk about it until it shows up. But for now, I got the whip sword, and I'm gonna be happy with that. Basically, what's weird is that in Symphony of the Night, so that bald guy that I found earlier and that I called Grandpa is the merchant of this game, and he's back at the entrance of the castle. And you can buy, as you might expect of a merchant, you can buy stuff from him. You can buy weapon, you can buy armor, so he's like the merchant in Symphony of the Night, although he's more accessible. What's interesting is that in Symphony of the Night, there was this system in place where you could buy weapons and armor from the merchant in Symphony of the Night, but if a weapon was like too strong for your level, it would incur like a penalty, and it wouldn't be as strong as it could have been. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the basic function of this particular numerical interaction with the weaponry in Symphony of the Night. It was basically to prevent you from buying a weapon that was way too strong early on and just like trivializing the rest of the game. But there was no system like that in place for armor. Hence you could get like really strong armor early in the game, and Alucard becomes even more invincible. But in Aria of Sorrow, there's no system like that for the weapons or the armor, which puts you in the weird position of there's a period of the game where there are no good swords available naturally. So you're kind of strangely incentivized to... Well, not... I shouldn't say strangely. We're like... Basically, you have to buy a good weapon from this guy at a certain point. And I didn't know that for a long time. So a lot of my early runs of this game had this miserable mid-game period where I like didn't have a good weapon. And it wasn't until later that I realized it's because you have to come back to this guy to buy something actually good. Which is pretty frustrating, I have to say. Although it's foreshadowing for things that happen in Dawn of Sorrow, but again, I don't want to talk about Dawn of Sorrow until I get to it. Yeah, I don't know what was so wrong. I don't know why it was so bad to just have weapons available in the castle. Maybe they felt like that was too, like... Because if there is a weapon... Because weapons are so important. Like, the weapon is the most important item in the whole game, right? The most important piece of equipment. Maybe they felt like if they put good weapons in a particular place, then that would basically strongly encourage the player to take a particular route or to take the zones in a particular order. And one of the things that these Metroidvania games appreciate is this pretense of open-endedness, which I think is sort of what's a good phrase? More apparent than real. There's very few deviations in a route through this castle. Through the castles, really, in any Metroidvania game that I've played so far. Like, I'm trying to think back to Aria of Sorrow and see if there's anything I can... There's not really any different... You can't really take, like, different routes. It's all very, like... I don't know. I don't think there's even any, like, optional zones. Which I mean, there doesn't have to be. I'm not saying that's necessarily a problem, but if the reason they didn't, like, put good weapons out in this castle was to, like, not force you to go a certain route, it's like you're going a certain route anyway. So if that's the reasoning for it, then it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Look at that. Did you see that? Did you see what just happened there? There was a flying enemy and I just fucking killed it. Because it didn't, like swim all over the screen like it's fucking drunk like they do in Circle of the Moon. God, I'm so glad I'm never going to play that game ever again. And just to be clear, like, I've been made a couple of, like, snarky comments, and I feel like I've done a lot of complaining mostly about Aria of Sorrow, but I actually do love this game. And it's not like a Circle of the Moon situation where I complain about it a lot and I like this game. This is like, I'm gonna complain about it, but I love this game. I think Aria of Sorrow is really, really fucking good. Is it as good as Harmony of Dissonance? I'll get back to that. Look, it's... Actually, this is not a useless character. This is one of the, like, few characters that's not useless. Can I just say something also? Is that Soma Soma's taken this whole situation pretty well. You know what I mean? Like, he passes out at a shrine and he wakes up in a haunted castle, and then he's just like, fuck it. I'm gonna go on an adventure. And I'm just gonna, like, kill all these monsters. I guess he has magic powers. Wow, this guy's a real fucking world-class intellect, isn't he? Top of his fucking class at Japanese high school. That's a weird-ass question. Okay, I want to talk about that soul that I just picked up. So, somebody leave me a message in the cockbox if you know what the fuck that means. Because I don't know if you guys saw what that said. But it said, jumping while taking damage restores health. Which is like, that's like a Mad Lib sentence. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. I tried putting that soul on, and I tried, like, jumping, like, taking damage and then jumping, and nothing happened. I just, like, took damage and then jumped around like an idiot. So I don't have any idea at all what the fuck, like, that's supposed to do. I don't know if that's, like, a translation problem, like, they didn't, like, effectively convey what it does. I don't know if it's, like, if you take damage in midair, you, like, restore health. That seems way too good if that's the case. But I just have no idea what to make of that. Another thing that I should say about the farming in Aria of Sorrow is that much like Circle of the Moon, some of the farming is really just, like, optional based off whether or not you want to do one particular part of the game that you don't really have to do, in my opinion. But that's not going to come up until much later, so we'll get back to that. See, he even does, like, the Alucard walk. Look at how many frames that walking animation has, by the way. That's a pretty fucking impressive walking animation. Yeah, I mean, I can't... Like I already said, I can't deny this game looks way better than Harmony of Dissonance, and sounds way better, too. It's just a few little quirks in the gameplay. I also think that the soul system is supposed to, I think it's supposed to replicate, I think it's supposed to be like replay value, is like the concept behind it, because something that I talked about when I talked about the DSS system in Circle of the Moon is the fact that different DSS cards drop from different enemies. I think that was because they had the idea of, oh, if you play the game through multiple times, you're going to naturally find different cards and you'll be able to play the game in different ways. But the way that it worked in practice is that Circle of the Moon was so hard that some cards would be, like, practically mandatory if you wanted to consistently kill everything with, like, beat the game without dying. And then some cards were practically useless. So it was a case of, like, yes, you would maybe get different cards to naturally drop on different playthroughs, but, like, depending on which ones you got, the game's difficulty could, like, fluctuate wildly. And the ultimate consequence of that would be that you are incentivized to farm specific cards. I think that with Aria of Sorrow, the intent was more that you would get different souls on different runs, and that the game would not be so hard that you would feel aggressively incentivized to farm specific souls. And again, for the most part, you're not. It's really only like one or two things that are like a problem in terms of the whole, like, farming vein. But it is there. It is in the game. This boss is pretty fucking annoying to fight, actually. It's kind of identical to Talos from Harmony of Dissonance. Talos was like a big, like, golem boss that stomped around back and forth. I think part of what makes this boss so frustrating is the fact that you have to do a lot of waiting. It's pretty hard to, it's pretty hard to do anything to him when he has his arm in front of him. I mean, maybe you can crouch under it and try to, like, stay near the leg and... No, because he'll just slap you out of the way. Yeah, no, you really can't do anything. I think the point of this boss is to teach you about the backdash. Is to teach you that you have certain movement tools available to you. And to kind of force you to use them. Although, no, that's like kind of what the Manticore teaches you. Because if you don't backdash on the Manticore, then he just fucking kills you. Although, the thing about the Manticore is that you can actually cheese the Manticore pretty easily. If you sit up on the platforms in the boss room for the Manticore, and then you just like shoot magic down at him, then he can't really do anything to you. Eventually he'll get close enough that maybe his tail can hit you, but you can just jump over the tail onto the higher platforms and like jump over him and like jump above him again. But I didn't do that because I'm not a pussy. And because I wanted to upload footage that was actually, like, semi-exciting to watch. Okay, that wasn't so bad. But that's, like, a lot of... You have to do a lot of fighting enemies on their terms in this game, which is not something that I'm very good at. Fun fact about that little fat wormy thing back there. That's apparently some Japanese mythological creature. Like the little fat worm that burrows in the ground. And that's actually the same mythological creature that the Pokemon Dunsparce is based off of. So, how's that for a fun fact, huh? That's just the kind of, like, high knowledge that you come to this channel to learn from yours truly. So what I just got there was I got a slide kick. One of my problems with Aria of Sorrow is that the slide kick has been significantly nerfed. You might have noticed that I did about 7 damage to that little fat worm in the room. Excuse me. The slide kick in Harmony of Dissonance was really cool because it did as much damage as a whip swing would do. And that was super important because it meant that if you were fighting the same enemies a lot, which you did in Harmony of Dissonance, you would know at what point you could, like, how many hits it would take before you could slide kick through them safely. Because the way the slide kick works is that if you kill an enemy with a slide kick, you go right through them. But if you don't kill them, then you, like, bonk into them and you take damage. So in Harmony of Dissonance, it was very easy to figure out when it was safe to utilize the slide kick aggressively, and it kept sort of the pace up in the game because you could, like, slide kick through weakened enemies, and it was just like a cool thing to do. But in Aria of Sorrow, they give you the slide kick, but the slide kick is actually almost useless for most of the game. There's a boss that's in the late game that it's, like, practically mandatory for, or in which it is practically mandatory to use it, but for most of the rest of the game, it's very hard to find a reason to use it. Which, like I said, is pretty fucking disappointing, especially considering how slick the movement in Harmony of Dissonance was. But, of course, I mean, you know, the movement in Aria of Sorrow is still much, much better than the movement in Circle the Moon, although that's, like, my last bowel movement is better than the movement in Circle the Moon. You know what I mean? Anyway, I think we're gonna be coming up pretty soon on what is... No, that's still a little whiles off, sorry. There's a boss that's gonna come up pretty soon that is, in my opinion, the actual hardest boss in the game. The Manticore is hard, but the Manticore has a cheese option, and it really is just a test of patience. of like not hitting him more than once, like hitting him and then immediately backdashing, and then hitting him and then immediately backdashing. That's how you play the Manticore fight. But there's a boss coming up here that is not like that. Okay, also, here's another thing I want to talk about. I don't know how you... Okay, that's actually not... Okay. Because it's hard to get past that Minotaur when you come back down out of this part of the castle. And I'm going to watch the footage again to see if like there's anything that I could have done to avoid it. Because I suspect that there may not have been. God damn, this thing's... I was always bad at fighting those. There were enemies like that in Symphony of the Night, and I always... I'm just not good at, like, reacting to them, I guess. I don't have very good spatial reasoning. Which is kind of a problem if you're trying to play, like, a video game like this. You need to be able to figure out where things are and where things are going to be going. There's actually no reason, by the way, for me to come to most of these little side areas. Something that they got rid of in Aria of Sorrow is like the energy tanks from Symphony of the Night and from Harmony of Dissonance, which, quite frankly, I disapprove of, because what getting rid of energy tanks and like MP expansions do, or because it would be MP expansions in this game, it wouldn't be heart expansions, is that you severely you've now really de-incentivized exploration. The only thing that exploration gets you in Aria of Sorrow is items, like super potions or like mind ups, which restore your MP, but the thing about that is that I'm doing a no item run, so if it wasn't for the fact that I wanted this title of this video to say 100% map completion, I would have absolutely no reason to go to most of these side areas. Okay, like... Okay, I don't know. I guess maybe I should have jumped behind him, but like, if I had jumped behind him, would he have turned around? I don't know. It's not a big deal, I guess. There's a save station out here, but I always felt like that part was kind of annoying. That painting back there, by the way, that's a cool painting, but that's also the painting that shows up on the game over screen. Not that I've ever seen it, of course, because I've never died in this game, but I've heard from lesser gamers that that's what the game over screen looks like. It has that, like, painting on it. I don't know if there's actually... I don't actually know if there's any pattern to the Minotaur's, I think it's timing based. When the Minotaur brings his axe down, I never really had it down super firmly. I just kind of like I just kind of played it by ear, where I'd like whip him a couple times and then back up and then maybe like try to dip in for one more. But I never found out what the specific timing was on dealing with on like the Minotaur's like overhand axe swing. So it's just one of those things you have to play safe with. That's kind of the name of the game in Aria of Sorrow, is playing it safe. That's why a fast weapon is so important, because you need to react quickly. Like dip in, swing, back up, reevaluate, dip in, swing, back up. So here we are in the ladies section of the castle, where all of the enemies are women. Really similar to Crissaegrim from World of Warcraft, the Den of Mortal Delights, I think they call it. Also, this witch enemy, I want you guys to look at this enemy for me, and like, anytime this enemy shows up, I swear to God, I swear to God the witches in this game are topless. Like, I have analyzed that sprite with like practically with a microscope, and I swear to God there's like one pixel that's covering up her boobs, and the pixel is like, it's like its existence is like deniable. It's like Schrodinger's pixel, where it almost seems like it doesn't exist, and it's frankly, I mean, it's offensive to me. I'm offended by that. And I really think that Nintendo and Konami are irresponsible for releasing this game to the unsuspecting general public. I think this game needs an R rating at the very least. Okay, now we're coming up on the worst boss in the whole game. I'm going to switch to the whip sword for this boss for all 3 phases, but the first 2 phases are not problems. It's only the 3rd phase that's a problem with this boss. The whip sword is good for phase 1 here because the point of this whole phase is just to keep distance and not get hit by her little lunge attack. And that's easy to do with the whip sword, so no reason to play this fight any differently from how I'm playing it, in my opinion. I'm not using any MP because I'm saving all of it for phase 3. Fucking die. Jesus. Come on. There we go. Oh no, I do... Okay. Okay, huh. So I thought I kept the whip sword for all 3 phases, but I think in this phase I swap back to the Gladius because it swings faster. Excuse me, and it's easier for me to like get in a hit and then like air control back away from him again. That makes more sense, because even though the whip could hit him from like further away, sorry about that. I think I bumped my microphone. Even though the whip could hit him from further away, like being able to air control faster is just better, because he does 2 attacks. The lightning attack is pretty easy to dodge. You can pretty much just outrange it, but then the fire attack will like send those 2 snakes out that chase you like all over the fucking... Well, they don't chase you, but they have a very wide horizontal swath of danger that the lightning attack does not have. And they also can clip you on those platforms if you're staying on them. So the fire attack is more dangerous. Okay, here's the worst fucking fight in the whole game. This is fucking bullshit. And it's why I'm putting the whip sword on. So this fucking crazy lizard bitch just does whatever the hell she wants the whole fight. Like, there's no telegraphing to any of its behaviors. It just, like, it jumps back on the ceiling whenever it wants. It crawls around on the floor whenever it wants. It sticks its tongue out whenever it wants. It, like, spits poison whenever it wants. It does whatever it wants all the time. And the guides that I've seen for this fight are full of shit, because they tell you to wait till she's on the floor to attack her, which is the worst possible time to do that, because when she's on the floor, so the tongue attack that she does, you can actually duck under that, because it doesn't, the hitbox for it is like higher than it looks. But the problem is that if you duck down on the floor, if you go down on the floor and then duck and attack, it might shoot its tongue at you, or it might just crawl at you and walk into you, or it might shoot poison gas at you. So the floor is the worst fucking place to attack it. What you should be doing is just keeping as much distance on it as possible and spamming magic, and then attacking it when it's on the ceiling, because when it's on the ceiling you can jump towards it, swing with the whip sword, and then immediately air control back away from it again and establish safe distance. You can't do that on the floor. If you try to attack it on the floor and then backdash, like, it's just gonna fucking hit you. Like, you can't do it fast enough. But if you can like be close enough to hit it only at the exact literal second that you're hitting it, then you can safely back away again and get out of the way of its fucking stupid ass poison attack. I don't know, maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe people who like speedrun this game have like figured out how this fucking stupid shit works, but this fight from the first time I fought it to the last time has just seemed like complete and total fucking nonsense. And it has too much health. This thing should just die. Well, the only reason it's taking so long for me to kill it is because I'm trying to kill it safely. Instead of just, like, praying to God that I do more damage to it before it does more damage to me, because that's not the way that I like to fight bosses, especially if it's a run where I'm trying to never die. Which is what's going on in this run, so... Sorry if this is taking a while, but if you saw somewhere in that endless barrage of poison clouds where I could have safely approached this boss, just let me know. Let me know when you think it would have been a smart idea to try to close distance and attack there. Yeah, that's the worst boss in the entire game. The biggest sack of shit I've ever seen in any of these Metroidvania games. The absolute worst offender of the does whatever the fuck it wants all the time problem. That marks the last time that I'm going to use the whip sword. For the rest of the run, I'm going to be using regular swords with regular sword range. I was trying so hard not to get hit by that fucking bitch, but it hit me anyway. Ugh, that's so frustrating. I guess that's a timing problem. Actually, I'm gonna get a pretty massive upgrade here because the next sword, there's a sword up at the top of this long room that I'm gonna get, and it actually does have a, what I was describing earlier, the thing that Alucard's sword had, like an aura of damage like above and in front of you when you swing. That's what this next weapon has, and that's what all the best, well, not all the best, but most of the best swords have. Because there actually is the last weapon that I get in the whole game actually is going to be an overhand sword, like the broadsword, even though I shit-talked them so hard, but that's because the one that I'm talking about is, like, super fast. But, again, that's not going to happen until closer to the end of the game, so I'll get to that when I get to it. Yeah, Hrunting. This is a great fucking weapon. I actually love this weapon because you get it at a great point in the game. It increases your range of attack. It does poison damage, and I'm fairly sure some of the enemies in this level are actually weak to poison, although I don't remember which ones. And I don't know why they would be. But anyway, here I'm actually going to do some farming. This farming is unfortunately... It's one of those things where I could wait until later to do this. Or I could wait until later and hope that, like, a different soul drops from a different enemy. Because you need... There's a secret area... Not a secret... There's an area of the game that you need either a curly soul or a manticore soul, or I think a devil soul, to get access to. And there is a manticore that I could fight later on, but farming that thing is not a good idea. Farming the devil is also not a good idea. It's possible that it could nat drop the one time that I fight the devil, or the one time that I fight the manticore, but I'm really not expecting that to happen, and I don't want to go all the way back here again, so this is just going to be a farm fest for a bit. And furthermore, I actually don't just farm the Curly Soul here. I actually also farm the Valkyrie Soul, as you can see there. That's because the Valkyrie Soul is, in my opinion, one of the best combat souls in the whole game. It really increases your range of attack. You summon like a big shining sword that like swings upwards, so it hits things above you, which is important, but what's special about it is the fact that it does a bunch of damage, and it does a bunch of holy damage specifically, and some of the most dangerous enemies in the game are weak to holy damage, and it just kind of worked out here that I got farming the Curlies here, usually, like, it's easy to farm the Valkyries and the Curlies at the same time, and this was a combat soul that I knew I wanted, so I figured as long as I was here. Here I'm trying really fucking hard not to get hit by these things, but it's just pointless. Because, like, I'm trying to throw a grenade down at them, but if the game doesn't know that the enemy's there on the screen, then they don't get hit by the grenade, and it's just like, sorry about that. Sorry, I'm still kind of getting used to this new setup, making sure that my voice isn't too loud, that I'm not clipping the microphone. It was the opposite problem before with my headset mic, where I was constantly paranoid about being too quiet. Now I'm worried about being too loud, so I gotta make sure that I'm a civilized distance away from my microphone. Anyway, yeah, Valkyrie Soul does holy damage. Some of the most dangerous enemies in the game are weak to holy damage. Specifically, there's one enemy in one particular part of the caverns. There's like an archdemon. That's the primary reason why I go out of my way to farm that. Even though I'm not really going out of my way to farm it, because I'm farming the Valkyries while I'm farming the Curlies, but like, that's why I want it. Is because there's a dangerous part of the caverns that I want to get through with the help of the Valkyrie Soul. So there's my very, very long and circuitous explanation for that particular farming segment. Yeah, look at that shit. That's crazy. Because one of the big problems with sub-weapons, not just in Aria of Sorrow, like soul sub-weapons, but like sub-weapons in Castlevania in general, is the fact that they don't do that much damage. Like, it's not usually very satisfying to use a sub-weapon in some of these later games, where enemies have so much more health. But with like the Valkyrie, it just hits so hard. It's like every time you utilize it, you know, like you're getting like actual concrete value out of it. And it's expensive, but it's also doing all of its damage like all at once, instead of like what you would have to do for a different soul, where you'd have to cast it multiple times to get that same burst. Even if another soul might be more like MP efficient, the fact that the Valkyrie is doing all this damage at once is what makes it so important. And what makes it so good. Look at that and horrible nudity. This is kind of like a weird part of the castle. Don't you think? All these like ladies, all these maids. I guess in Chronicles Dracula had like weird maid enemies, but I don't know. There's some creepy implications about having a section of the castle that's full of like nothing but women. I guess it's thematic, right? The temptations of evil. Probably makes the most sense for it to show up regarding like, because this is like this is like a subconscious or like a spiritual castle, right? It's kind of like Castle B in Harmony of Dissonance, which I should mention again, that even though the GBA trilogy, all three of the games feel totally different in my opinion. Although Circle of the Moon feels more different to Aria and Harmony than Aria and Harmony feel to each other, if I'm making any sense at all there. But they all do feel really different. But at the same time, they do kind of have connective threads. Like with Circle of the Moon, it's the fact that Circle of the Moon has the concept of like two companions, like one of whom turns evil. Harmony expanded on that and basically made that like the central plot of the whole game. And then in Aria brings back the idea of Dracula's castle being like a physical place, but also kind of like a spiritual place, because that's what Castle B in Harmony of Dissonance is. In Harmony of Dissonance is supposed to be. God. It's a shame that I love Harmony of Dissonance so much, because having to make all of those S sounds is extremely annoying. And it's tough for like the microphone too. Anyway, yeah, I think that's basically what Graham said when you talked to him, is that this is sort of like a ghost castle, or like it's not a physical castle. It exists inside of an eclipse, and you cannot build castles inside of eclipses. People have tried before and it does not work. Although I guess you could say that rather than being a connective tissue to Harmony of Dissonance, that could maybe be like a connective tissue to Symphony of the Night, because The reverse castle is obviously not like a replica of any physical castle that was ever built. It's some kind of weird, fucked up, spiritual creation. Although really, Dracula's castle is always some kind of spiritual creation, because it's only, I assume, in Dracula's curse that... Oh yeah, that's what the curly soul actually does, by the way. You turn into a giant lady and you charge forward. And the reason you need that to get into that area I was talking about before is because you need to get through like a waterfall, and you have to be going at a certain speed to get through it. It's kind of like the wolf form, the speed booster from Symphony of the Night, but more expensive to utilize, and also kind of stranger. I should explain what I'm doing back here. I'm going back to the merchant because now I'm going to go to the clock tower, and the clock tower in this game, as in Harmony of Dissonance, is the most dangerous part of the entire game, although for different reasons. One of the things that Aria of Sorrow brought back in a big way from the older games, something that not even Circle of the Moon in all of its sadism saw fit to inflict upon the player, is environmental hazards. And by that I mean spikes. Yeah, I had like 15 partisans because I was farming so many Valkyries. Spikes. This clock tower has spikes in them, and the clock tower also has Medusa heads that will petrify you if they come into contact with you. And this creates the biggest hazard in the whole game. Because the way the petrification works in Aria of Sorrow is this, and this is also the way that it works, I believe, in Symphony of the Night, is that if you get petrified and then you get hit, you take double damage. That's especially problematic in the context of environmental hazards and in the context of Aria of Sorrow hard mode, because one of the two things that Aria of Sorrow hard mode does is, I think I already mentioned it, it decreases the amount of damage you do by a moderate amount, but it also increases the damage you take from environmental hazards specifically. So you're taking like triple-digit damage every time you come into contact with spikes, and now you have Medusa heads flying around that can petrify you, meaning in the same area as these spikes that do 1,000,000 damage, so now you're taking 1,000,000 damage times 2. And if you're ever going to die at any point in Aria of Sorrow, that's what's going to kill you, is getting petrified by Medusa heads and then falling into or getting like pushed into spikes and taking like 200 damage. And if you don't break out of the petrification in time, those spikes could tick on you twice, and you could have just taken 400 damage. So that's what's going on here. Oh no, I'm not going to the clock tower. Well, okay, I am, but I'm not going directly to the clock tower. That's the reason why I picked up all of this stuff, like a good weapon, good armor, better weapon, better like items, is because of the general difficulty spike that is embodied not just in the clock tower, but in the lead up to the clock tower right here, which is, I forget what this is called. It's like the sky gardens, the floating gardens, right? Okay. Yeah, this is a big difficulty spike. The enemies here are very punishing. These things petrify you, and then you can take double damage. There's a gauntlet of rooms that you go through in the later half of this zone, where you basically have to fight a lot of very dangerous enemies all in a row with no save station between them. So if you're playing no items like I am, then you really have to make sure you are going in with every advantageous tool that's available to you. So that's actually the main reason why I went and did that. All that shit about the clock tower, all that shit I said about the clock tower is true, but it's actually not super relevant to the items that I went and bought from the merchant man. So sorry for that little misdirect, but it's been a little while since I collected this footage, rather, I'm sorry to say. And the reason I'd forgotten about this whole zone is because this is kind of a strange this is a very strange area of the castle, because you come here once at this point in the game, and then you don't. But there's not a boss in here or anything. It's just kind of like an obstacle course, I guess, between you and the clock tower. And navigating it is very strange because how you get to the different rooms depends on which of these two doors you go up into at the top of this zone. And once you get into the floating rooms, going through different doors can take you to like different places. It's hard to describe, but I think you'll see what I'm talking about when I get up there, because navigating to the place that I want to get to involves interacting with that strange like navigational quirk of the area. Yeah, that's so fucking satisfying, because those charging horsemen with the big halberds, those guys are back from Symphony of the Night, and the first time I encountered those guys in Symphony of the Night, they made me so fucking mad. I completely lost my shit, because I couldn't figure out like how to. Because in Symphony of the Night, you fight them in like a hallway in the Coliseum that's really cramped and really small, and it's hard to like you can't get distance on them. So if you don't spam holy water to kill them before they even get to you, you just get like knocked around all over the place, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world. But they cooled. You don't fight them in any closets in Aria of Sorrow, or Dawn of Sorrow for that matter, where they reappear again. Yeah, this is a good game. I'm gonna have some complaints about this game, like I already mentioned, but this game is really good. Like, there's a reason why people love this game so much. These werewolves are pretty fucking hard to fight. You kind of have to, like, yeah, you need to, like, intercept them when they do their little slide kick. But that can be tricky because they don't do a great job, in my opinion, of telegraphing when they're going to do that, and when they're going to do the other thing they do, which is shooting fire on the ground. And so if you just crouch in front of them and spam your sword attack, like, maybe you'll intercept a slide kick, or maybe you'll just get hit by the fire attack. Yeah, there's the Manticore I was talking about, and farming that thing is just not practical. Also, the reason why I'm leaving so much of this area unexplored is because you come back here at like the very end of the game to get to the part of the game that gives you the best ending. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I'm talking about. I was crouching and spamming my sword to try to preempt the slide kick, but then he just like fireballed me, and then he slide kicked into me anyway. So this is actually not. This is the way to the clock tower. Like, this is where I want to go. But the reason I kind of hesitated there is because I sort of wanted to get to the save station in the Sky Garden to heal myself up before I went into the clock tower, but like I figured I'm already here. If I want to go back and try to go to the save station, I'm gonna have to go back through all that shit again. This is just the easiest way to do it. That's interesting logic right there. You know, I was born on almost the same day that Tupac died, so what does that tell you? I think that's true anyway. Same month at least. Oh man, he's crazy, right? See, I told you he was a bad guy. This is a very strange little world that Igarashi creates in Aria of Sorrow, because for the rest of the Castlevania series, you kind of get the impression that supernatural things obviously happen because Dracula's castle keeps showing up, but Aria of Sorrow sort of creates two conflicting messages, where on the one hand, Soma doesn't think that Dracula really existed, which implies that Dracula's castle and like the supernatural things associated with it are presumably oh man, it's the hot lady again. It's the hot half-Japanese blonde lady. Why is he apologizing? I forget this part. Oh, yeah. Hmm. Can I just like express an opinion real quick? I think this conversation could have been completely removed from the game, and I don't think anything would have been lost by it. I have this like thing about talking in video games where I think a little bit of it goes a long way, and I think that Aria of Sorrow goes a little overboard with it. I think Harmony of Dissonance kind of does, but Harmony of Dissonance, like, it feels like it's more a product of necessity. Here, it feels more like he wants to introduce all these characters, but I don't know... But most of the characters don't need to exist. Anyway, storyline. Yeah, world building. Very interesting contradiction. Where, on the one hand, Soma doesn't know who Dracula is, or doesn't think Dracula was real, rather, which would suggest that, in the world of Castlevania, supernatural things are not, like, commonplace. It all seems to be localized, because if it was the case that, like, demon worshippers and witches and vampires were popping up all over the place, then there would be nothing particularly unbelievable about the idea that Dracula and Dracula's castle would have existed, right? It would be, like, common knowledge. It would be like just a facet of the world that people like have to deal with sometimes, or maybe just a facet of Europe that people have to deal with sometimes, because Soma is from Europe. Although of course the eclipse is now in Japan, and I don't think that's ever explicitly explained why that happens, but I think I can take a guess. Anyway, the point that I'm making is that on the one hand, supernatural things seem like they're like localized to Dracula's castle. But on the other hand, you got like Graham, and you've got Yoko, who like works for the church as like a demon hunter. But if Dracula, well, I guess if Dracula came back in '99, maybe that like changed the protocol. It's weird that Graham can just walk through this castle like using dark powers to like presumably destroy the monsters and get to the throne room. Like, he's not just a dude who just showed up, right? He has, like, magic or something. So it's odd... It's odd that that's the case. I don't know, maybe it's like a Harry Potter thing, where it's like, magic and demons do exist, but it's all kept secret. But that also is tough for me to believe, because the thing about the events surrounding Dracula's castle is that it's not like it was a one-time thing, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's one text from the 17th century about a guy named Simon Belmont who allegedly attacked an evil sorcerer's castle full of demons. Like, that kind of shit appears in, like, actual real-life historical records, and we know that's not true. But the thing about this, the whole Dracula's castle, the whole Dracula thing, is that, number one, it kept happening over and over again. And number two, in Rondo, like, Dracula sent stone giants to attack a town in the 1790s. Like, I think that would have someone would have written about that. You know what I mean? Like, it's harder to... I feel like that would be a very well-recorded historical event. I don't know. I know I'm overthinking it, but if you're gonna... I mean, I don't know. If you're gonna introduce, like, a storyline like that, then... whatever. So here's the Grim Reaper fight. This is pretty fucking hard, but as you can see, I'm using the giant ghost soul that I farmed back in the chapel to not worry about his scythes. However, this does create sort of a timer to this phase, because as you can see, my MP is draining, and once my MP drains all the way, this shield's gonna go away, and I'm gonna have to actually, like, fight him. Which means that I have to get out of this phase before that happens, if I want to be safe. And fortunately I do. That's actually the big reason why I picked up the better weapon from the Merchantman. So what makes the Grim Reaper fight so hard is mostly just the fact that it's so punishing. If I get hit by any of these attacks, I'm going to take well, now I know, I'm going to take 120 damage. It means I can only get hit like 5 times before I die. Which might sound like a lot, but this guy does some crazy shit. That right there, what just happened, and what just happened there again, that was like the secret thing that made this fight work for me, because I could not figure out how to avoid that attack for the longest time when he like slides forward. That was the thing that like would always hit me, and then I realized that I could just inexplicably, you can just slide kick through him, and I don't have any idea how this works. I don't know if slide kicking gives you iframes or what, but that's just how it happens, I guess. And I also don't really want him to be over here because, yeah, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to herd him back over to the left, because when he does his attack where he throws the scythe and then, like, sends it, and it, like, sticks along the ceiling and then, like, rolls around down to the floor, that attack's actually really hard to dodge if he's too close to the right wall, because he'll basically send the scythe in such a way that it's very hard to avoid, and it'll like come back at you very fast. But if he's all the way over on the left and he's facing to the right, then he'll throw the scythe on the ceiling, and then you have like a good period of time to just attack him while the scythe is off screen, and then you can jump over it once it comes back along on the floor. So I don't know if that's hard to like describe verbally, but there was a certain position that I wanted him to be in, and because he kept doing the like charge along the floor attack, he got out of that position, and I was trying to herd him back into it, but fortunately I killed him before it became a problem. So Grim Reaper fight, very sorry about that, very dangerous. Definitely trickier than the Grim Reaper in Harmony of Dissonance. And, frankly, trickier than the Grim Reaper in Circle the Moon, because in Circle the Moon it's just a matter of going in with the right DSS card. Whereas this guy, you have to like actually learn his attacks and respond to them appropriately. That fight also is actually might have actually been easier to do with Hrunting, because as nice as this Graham sword that I picked up is, the thing about it is that it doesn't have the like overhand, like above and in front of you component to its attack range that I talked about earlier, the thing that Hrunting has. And that's important because it means that when the Grim Reaper does his like scythe throw attack where he just like throws it straight in the air and I crouch underneath him, if I had Hrunting on, I could have kept attacking him while I was crouching. The fact that I didn't means that meant that I could only hit him like a couple times, then I had to duck again to avoid the attack. So actually, Graham is definitely way better to have in these parts of the Clock Tower when I have to fight things. Helps me reach like one-shot thresholds, but for fighting the Grim Reaper specifically, putting it back on might not have been the worst idea in the world. So whether I really necessarily needed to go back to the Merchant when I did to buy Graham, maybe, maybe not. But I think I just wanted to be on the safe side and just take every advantage that I could get. Not just in terms of the Grim Reaper, but in terms of the combat leading up to the Grim Reaper. Oh, and of course for the Skyway, because Graham is definitely better for the Skyway combat. No question at all about that. So ultimately I do think I made the right call, but it wasn't necessarily directly related to the Grim Reaper fight. Sorry, I'm doing this thing again where like I'm remembering what happened as the footage is going, which is not really what I should be doing, in my opinion. Dude, this music is so sick. This is one of the music tracks in the game that I think is really good. Now I think I'm going back to the Merchant again, because now I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go down to the caverns and then down to this large underwater zone, which is honestly pretty annoying to navigate. But what it's gonna let me do is it's gonna let me oh no, I'm not going back to the Merchant, because okay, now I remember. Yeah, pretty annoying to navigate, but it's also where I'm gonna get like the best weapon I'm gonna get for the whole game. And also the best armor, I think? No, not quite the best armor, but... And actually not quite the best weapon, because there's actually two best weapons in this game, but... the best weapon that I'm gonna get for, like, general usage and, like, general combat. And you might think it's a little early in the run for me to be getting the best weapon in the game, but I specifically designed... I specifically planned out... No, I am going to the Merchant. What am I going to the Merchant for? This is very strange. Maybe I'm getting armor. Yeah, I'm probably getting armor because one of the consequences of going for like this really good weapon early on is that there's going to be some combat sections that are really, really dangerous. Because I'll be like under-leveled for them, basically. So I think I want to get every advantage that I can. Yeah, okay. Okay. Or no, oh, okay. No, I'm confused again. Oh, man, this is really bad. Sorry. I forgot where exactly the entrance to the caverns was. No, I'm not going to the merchant. Maybe I could have. Maybe I was thinking about doing it, but I decided not to. Because I think I could technically get some better armor from the merchant right now if I wanted to, but I think I just didn't want to bother going back again. Okay. Okay, yeah, okay. Now I remember. That's kind of, I don't know. I don't know if I really necessarily agree with my decision to actually... I think it might have been smart, actually, to go to the merchant and get the armor that I was talking about, because some of this shit can be really dangerous. Although, actually, this is going to be an important point in the run pretty soon, because I'm going to get, the first, consistent source of healing in the game that I will have access to. In Circle of the Moon, there's a DSS card combo called Jupiter Mandragora, which lets you slowly restore health if you stand still. In Aria of Sorrow, there's a soul that lets you do the same thing, where like if you stand still, you restore health. And that's super, super, super important because of how dangerous the part of the game that I'm going to go to get the really good weapon is going to be. And it basically means that I no longer have to really worry about... it sort of changes the dynamic of the game's difficulty because I no longer... If I ever really, really need to heal, all I need to do is just get into an empty room and stand still and heal. And fortunately for you guys, I don't think I'm going to make as much use of that in this game as I made use of Jupiter Mandragora in did I say Jupiter Manticore? I meant Jupiter Mandragora in Circle the Moon. So don't worry, there's not going to be a whole lot of standing around if I can avoid it. But I think I am going to do it at least once just to get through a particularly hairy section. Because this is no deaths. This is I don't want to die. What's really remarkable about Aria of Sorrow is kind of like the awful weapon availability if you don't know about this one particular weapon that I'm going to go out of my way to get, which is not the weapon that I just picked up, by the way. The really good weapon is going to come a little bit later. But if you don't know about it, because it's like in a hidden room in a weird part of the castle, if you don't know about it, you're kind of stuck with this for almost the rest of the game. And then there's a fire sword you can get in the second to last zone of the game, which is pretty much what you're stuck with for the rest of the game. Otherwise, there is, of course, a Crissaegrim in this game, as there is one in Symphony of the Night, but as in Symphony of the Night, the Crissaegrim is, oh yeah, this is the thing that drops the healing soul, so I'm just gonna pause and farm a little bit. Yep. The Crissaegrim's a random drop, and I refuse. If I can avoid farming, I will avoid farming, and I really don't care. Well, I guess I'm contradicting myself because I just farmed for healing, but like the Crissaegrim is not necessary. The giant worm for like emergency healing might be necessary based off of how punishing some of the combat sections in this part of the game are going to be. Crissaegrim is not necessary to beat this game safely. So I will farm if I feel like I have to or I should, but if it's just farming to get like an advantage that I don't think is absolutely necessary, then I'm not going to do it. That's what I'm getting at. I think I probably could have skipped farming the giant worm, too, by the way. I don't think it ever actually, like, saves my life at any point during any of this. I'll keep an eye out and see if I was wrong about that. This part is so annoying, because it's so hard to, Yeah, I think I'm going to do it right here, yeah. Unfortunately, I'm going to do this right here for a second. But it's only because I know that the next room that I'm going into is super, super dangerous. Because I think this is the one, or it's close to the one with Medusa heads that petrify you and then a big demon enemy. And the Medusa heads that petrify you are the most dangerous enemy in the whole game. I guess you can enjoy the nice soothing music. Okay, good. I think I was debating between Headhunter and Skeleton Knight here, and I think I went with Skeleton Knight just because, like... Oh no, I went with Headhunter, okay. That was probably because Headhunter gives you slight defensive buffs, and I just really didn't want to die. I really didn't want to die, and I really didn't want to, I didn't want to take any more damage than I absolutely had to. So if I had some way to avoid that, I was going to take it. And it, Headhunter increases your int, so that means more Valkyrie damage, which is going to be really important in about 2 seconds. Or less than 2 seconds, yep. Yeah, that enemy is the part of this area that's really dangerous, because it's... If I get petrified by the Medusa heads and then like a merman hits me, I'm going to take like 2 damage. But if I get petrified by the Medusa heads and then that demon enemy hits me, that's when it gets super dangerous. So that's the situation I'm in right now. What I'm waiting for right now is I'm waiting for another floating platform to come down so I can go to the area of the castle I was talking about to get the really good weapon. And I think the really good armor. Yeah, I think both are going to be available. Although I quick dip over here first to open up a warp room. Do I use this? No, I'm just... Okay. Oh no, I was making sure that I discovered it, because I remember at one point when I was doing a run, I like walked into that room, and then for some reason the game like didn't think I actually discovered it. It was very odd. So here comes the part... Oh, this is actually really important. So the Kaiser Knuckle was a weapon that I got all the way back in the chapel, but I haven't used it until now, because it just hasn't been necessary. But the Kaiser Knuckle is really good against these enemies because they attack by shooting out these seeds, and then if the seeds land on top of my head, I take 1,000,000 damage, as you can see. And there, I just about shit my pants because I thought I was going to die. Leading to this unfortunate interlude. That was really weird, because usually if I'm close enough to those enemies and I'm using the Kaiser Knuckle, usually the seeds get destroyed by the Kaiser Knuckle before they get to me. But there, for some reason, like, I was so close to it that, like, contact damage... That I was, like, taking contact damage, but then also somehow the Kaiser Knuckle wasn't intercepting it. That might have been a timing thing. That might have been a problem with, like, I just didn't punch at it at the right time. But anyway, the whole Kaiser Knuckle strat in the first place is, I think, a mistake, because what I should have done there is what I'm going to do with the rest of these enemies, which is just use the Curly Soul to charge through them. This whole Kaiser Knuckle thing was kind of a bad idea, and it was done because I wanted to conserve my MP for the part of this area where I would actually have to charge through the waterfall, because that takes some MP to execute. But that was dumb too, because in the room where you have to charge through the waterfall, there's a torch that drops a big heart, and you can just keep walking in and out of the room to farm the torch to restore your MP if that's what you want to do. So this was all pretty bad and pretty dumb, and led to this riveting 2-minute segment in which I stand still, contemplating my life decisions, while the number 5 sets up a permanent residence above my head. This is not the kind of thing that should ever be put into any kind of YouTube footage. but hopefully this demonstrates the peril that I was going through. Headhunter again. Yeah, that's what I should have done the whole time. Yeah, take that shit off. The thing about the Kaiser Knuckle is that the first time I found it, why do I still have it on? What am I thinking? That's very strange. Maybe I want to try it again on like the later enemies. So there's the Eversing. That's really good armor. How much is this going to increase it by? That was like 20 something. So that's a really good, really important defensive buff. And then at the end of this zone coming up here, I'm going to get the best weapon in the game. The best weapon in the game available without any farming anyway. Or without doing any stupid shit. Oh my god, I'm going for it. Okay. Okay, that's what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to, like, yeah, clear out the air and kill the seeds. Okay, so wow, I actually can't believe I tried that again. Yeah, the Kaiser Knuckle is a good weapon, but it's also very risky because anything that makes you have to this is funny. I just wanted to see what that did, because I'd never seen it before. But it's inherently risky because you have to get so close to enemies to hit them, and that's just always a bad idea, pretty much. I do not want to try to Kaiser Knuckle the Alrayun, so I skip past it. I think here I'm scared shitless because, oh my god, I'm insane. Okay, this was so risky because if this thing had actually hit me with any of its seeds, then I absolutely would have died. Because being poisoned in Aria of Sorrow is like getting poisoned in Symphony of the Night, where it makes you take double damage. And those seeds were ticking on me for like 40. Although, actually, I have the Ever Song now, so maybe, maybe I felt like I would have been fine anyway. Okay, well, still, that's... I guess maybe it would have been fine. Oh, these are enemies that are... Yeah, this is so important. The fact that the Valkyrie does so much damage to those turrets, because those turrets take a fucking million damage to kill otherwise. And here's the best weapon in the whole game. The Claim Solace? Claim Solace or whatever. Overhand weapon, but it swings as fast as a regular weapon, and it does a million damage. Like the Valkyrie Soul, it does holy damage, which has a lot of really important, really useful, effective damage interactions. No reason whatsoever to farm for the Valmanway if this is available for free. And I think it buffs your other stats too, it doesn't just buff your attack. So here is an enemy that I think I'm going to farm later, because in order to get the best ending for Aria of Sorrow, you need to fight the boss in the throne room with a specific soul setup. You need the Flame Demon Soul, the Giant Bat Soul, and the Succubus Soul. And the Giant Bat Soul is a exploration tool that you always get by beating a boss, but the other two you have to farm for, unfortunately. And this is just the best place to farm Flame Demons. Actually, now that I say that, I might wait to farm it until later, because there is one more place you can farm them. I think this is where I usually farm them, but I decided to hope for a Nat Soul drop later on, so I think I actually am not going to farm them here. Which is pretty smart, because this is a pretty dangerous stretch of the game, to be honest. Even after getting the Eversing, like, things can go very wrong. What makes the Claim Solace so good is really just the fact that it swings overhand like that. Because, as I think I already said, flying enemies in this game are not as obnoxious as flyers in Circle of the Moon, but but they're still pretty problematic. Like, I can actually just fight these. I can actually just kill these things. I don't have to like bait an attack from them. I don't have to wait. I can just kill them. Ditto with the harpies. Ditto with the gargoyles or the gremlins or whatever they're called. The gray winged things, the gargoyles, which I'm gonna have a lot to say about those gargoyles later. But for now, just keep in mind that they exist. And here, I think I'm gonna I'm debating whether or not to try to fight the plant ladies or just curly through them. I think I'm deciding to just curly through them. Or no, I'm gonna... Okay, well. I think this was also... I wanted to wait for my MP to restore before I curlied through them, and as long as I'm standing here waiting, not doing anything, I might as well put on Giant Worm. This is more Giant Worm than I was hoping, but, than I was hoping you guys would see, but... This is the last part of the game that I think I'm going to actually use it, because this is the most dangerous part. As I think I said, I'm basically under-leveled for this. I shouldn't really be here yet, even though it is accessible now. The Claimed Solace is actually better at fighting those plant things than I think the Kaiser Knuckle is, because it's a little bit more you have better coverage. If a seed is directly above you, the Claimed Solace is going to hit it. This passageway is going to spit me back out into the library. The ancient books give you hints about what souls to put on during the boss fight in the throne room, which is very it's this thing that Igarashi started doing in Castlevania games, where it's like, if you want to get the best ending, you have to equip certain items during certain boss fights. Which, I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily like that. Although that's not exactly what happens during Dawn of Sorrow, but that is what happens during Harmony of Dissonance and during Aria of Sorrow. In Harmony of Dissonance, it's kind of interesting because it makes what's already the hardest boss fight in the whole game, the Maxime fight, even harder. So it's kind of like you're fighting a harder boss in order to get the better ending, which I think is fair. But I don't know if I necessarily like it more than the Symphony of the Night requirement of getting full map completion. Exploration and map completion is a problem that these games tend to have later on anyway, but I'll talk more about that later. Something that you guys... Like, I think I already mentioned the fact that there are no energy tanks or hard expansions in Aria of Sorrow, and I don't really like that about the game. Because I think that providing proper incentives to explore is important. You don't want to make a player feel like they wasted their time if they went out of their way to go to some off-the-beaten-path area of the game that didn't give them anything. If a part of the game has good armor or good weapons, like that little oddball zone that I just went to has almost the best armor and, in my opinion, absolutely the best weapon in the whole game. The best like pragmatically attainable weapon in the whole game. Not pragmatically. What's the word? What's the good word I'm looking for? Conveniently accessible item in the whole game. Item you get without fucking farming. Which the game already has too much of. That soul that I just got, by the way, increases my strength by 16, so I don't think I'm going to take that off for anything else until I get the Succubus soul. Because the Succubus soul heals you when you deal damage to things. Which is also what makes fast weapons good, by the way. Just fast weapon benefit number 25 is the Succubus soul. So it's nice that the 3 souls you need to get the best ending are all pretty good, but it's a shame that the Flame Demon soul is not my favorite of the offensive souls. I'm going to be using the Valkyrie soul for most of the game, and then towards the very end I'm going to swap to the Nightmare soul, which shoots evil horses that do a lot of damage. Because as good as the Valkyrie Soul is, it does have like a little wind-up to it, and it is a little bit on the expensive side. And there's another specific reason I swapped to the Nightmare Soul, but I'm not gonna get into that quite yet, because it has to do with a certain boss fight at the end. I want to say this guy fucks me up. Yeah, this is so weird. I usually, like... I think I fuck up the timing on some of my... Okay, that's good. Yeah, this was so strange. Just Valkyrie Soul. Okay, yeah, now I'm scared. This was so weird. Usually, I think what usually happens there is I usually start hitting them from far away enough that when they wind up like a charge attack, I just knock them back again. But there, I think I got too close to them. I think I was expecting to do like some kind of like 1-2 combination attack with the sword, and I didn't like... Yeah, now I'm doing it better. Now I'm actually maintaining distance and taking advantage of the range of the weapon. So that's what I was supposed to do. I think I just kind of got cocky there, or I forgot how much leeway in terms of range the sword actually gave me. So that was pretty fucking scary, but that's what it's like in this game. Like everything is fine until it's not. It's a lot like Harmony of Dissonance in that way. That's kind of what the reverse castle in Symphony of the Night is like too, actually, at the very beginning. When you have like those Nova skeletons doing like 100 damage, and you have like spikes and shit everywhere. So here's the Legion boss again, making his triumphant return from Symphony of the Night and Harmony of Dissonance. Not my favorite iteration of the fight, because it encourages some pretty annoying strategies. Specifically what I'm doing right now, which is sitting and waiting for it to show up again. You can... I think there's a way to go through it, but there's no way to go through it without taking damage from it. At least not with the tools that I currently have. There's a soul you can get at the very end of the game called Black Panther that lets you do like an energy charge. And I'm pretty sure if I used that, I could get through it. Actually, the Curly Soul could probably let me charge through it, but that seems like an extravagant use of my... That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't even know what to say about that. Using the Curly Soul to charge back and forth on the bottom of the arena seems like a pretty extravagant use of my MP, and I would much rather use that MP to just use the Valkyrie Soul over and over again. See, this is the power of holy damage. I'm pretty sure the only reason I'm doing as much damage as I am is because this thing is weak to holy. Oh shit. Look out. The Legion Soul was the first soul that I got that struck me as being like really good, like I want to use this all the time, which was like combat souls. And it is pretty good. It fires like lasers that have a pretty long range and do pretty good damage, and it's actually 3 different lasers, so if you're attacking something that's really big, it's going to get hit with like multiple lasers multiple times. But ultimately, it doesn't have the same flexibility of range that the Valkyrie Soul has, and it doesn't do holy damage, so it just doesn't pack the same kind of punch. Yeah, that Galamoth Soul, this whole little section of the game is very strange because it's entirely optional. The Galamoth Soul lets you get to a certain part of the demon of the guest house. I forget what it's called. The brothel. I'm sorry, that's not a good thing to say in a YouTube video. The whorehouse. I'm sorry, that's not appropriate either. The slut shack. I'm so sorry. That's completely uncalled for. The bitch barracks. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. This is all just so horribly inappropriate. The place where all the ladies are. That's much better. There's a secret place where all the ladies. There's a secret like room in the place where all the ladies are, where there's a rabbit in a tuxedo who's guarding a hallway, and you need the Galamoth Soul to get past him. But he's not guarding anything. I think he's guarding one of the 3 books that gives you like a hint as to how to get the best ending. I think that's what's going on. So, That's why you would come down here, other than, you know, a pretty easy boss fight that gives you a free level up and a pretty good combat soul if you don't have the Valkyrie or if you don't have anything else that's any good. Guaranteed drops are super important in these games because, like if you don't want to farm, which I don't want to farm. The only reason the only reason I have the Valkyrie soul is because it was like incidental. So if I didn't feel like I had to farm for the Curly soul, I would probably be using like, well, maybe I would farm for the Valkyrie soul anyway, just because of that one room in the caverns with the demon and the Medusa heads. And I think this is where I'm gonna farm for the Flame Demon soul. Yeah, I think I may or may not cut here, because the drop rate on these things is pretty good. I might not have to. Okay, good. Good, good, good. The fewer cuts, the better. I've heard people talk up the Were-Jaguar soul, but I don't know. I'm skeptical, because I think I used it once and it didn't do that much damage, and more importantly, it doesn't increase your vertical range of attack at all. It doesn't and it doesn't go that far forward. It's like you're limited to it's further horizontal range, but only on things that are, oh my god. Oh shit, he just teleported away. She takes a knife in the gut pretty damn well, I have to say. Okay, so he can do that. So I was right about him using magic, but like, are there just people out there who have like dark magic powers? I guess there must be. If there are people out there who have like good magic powers, like the Belnatus clan, damn. You don't even know this lady. He just wants to cop a feel while she's unconscious. I'm sorry, that's so fucked up. That's such a horrible thing to say. God, what's wrong with me? It's the darkness of Dracula's castle. It's seeping into my soul. One of the things I don't like about Aria of Sorrow, actually, is all of the fucking around you have to do with the souls that manipulate your movement in water. Having to, like, do menuing to, like, turn on the Skula soul, or turn on the Undyne soul, or turn off the Skula and Undyne souls. It's so, so annoying. In Dawn of Sorrow, they made that a little bit better by making it so that the walking underwater soul is, like, always on by default, but I'm not talking about Dawn of Sorrow, I'm talking about Aria of Sorrow, which is this game that I'm playing right now. This is like, okay. I've done this part of the game without the claim Solus before, and it's fucking miserable. It's like practically impossible. So if you're playing this game, like, as dangerous as it is to go to the Forbidden Area and like deal with those dangerous like plant ladies, it's so much better than the alternative. Which is trying to do this shit without it. Yeah, and there I'm doing the Symphony of the Night Alucard thing, where it's like I swing in midair, and then, yeah, that's so good. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The 1-2. The double. Boom. What am I doing? What is happening here? Oh, I know what I'm doing. Okay, so here I'm gonna farm another soul. I'm farming the Medusa head soul for the boss in the arena. And okay, I see there's 4 minutes left in this video file. I hope I'm not gonna farm Medusa heads for 4 minutes, am I? I don't like the way this is shaping up at all. This does not bode well. Did I not? Okay. This is pretty bad. I'm okay, I have a bad feeling that that I didn't cut any of this because I wanted to make like some kind of point. The thing is, though, that I can't really blame the game for this because I think that this is actually an unnecessary, this is some unnecessary caution on my part. I don't necessarily need the Medusa Soul to kill the boss in the arena. I really want it, but I don't know if I necessarily need it. There's a crazy-ass storm going on outside. I'm going to talk about the real world because what's going on in the fake world right now is unusually much less interesting. Like, it's sunny out, but there's also, like, rain clouds, and the rain is coming down really, really hard. I think that's what happens when, like, a tornado happens. I wonder if the mic might actually pick some of this up. The rain is coming down really hard. So if I'm about to, like, die, and this is the last recording I ever make, I leave my YouTube channel to the next of kin that I don't have. Send Bam Margera a message saying that I appreciate everything he's done, and that I'm going to be earth-rocking in heaven pretty soon. This is actually really crazy looking. I should find, like, okay, this is kind of stupid, actually. I'm pretty mad at myself for not just, like, cutting this out. I mean, I guess I still could. There's no reason for me to keep any of this in. But I guess this raises an interesting philosophical question. Is it fair that the tool that I want should be locked behind... Okay, thank you, God. Okay, it wasn't 4 minutes, but it was... Okay. 2 minutes of farming? You know what? 2 minutes of farming, compare that to Circle of the Moon. That's a fucking cakewalk. But I guess that does raise an interesting question about farming. Like, is it fair that that should be that I should have to do that in order to get a tool that I want? Right? Is that like just toll? A just toll. But now we're going to get into the other farming segment. I'm going to farm these gargoyles. And I'm going to farm these gargoyles because there is a room, because I want to get 100% map completion. There are 3, like, challenge rooms near the boss of the arena. And one of these 2 challenge rooms features a whole lot of Medusa heads that petrify you and a whole lot of spikes. And like I already mentioned, that's the most dangerous combination in the whole game. That's like, if you fuck around with Medusa heads that petrify you and spikes, you are, like, begging to die. So in order to fix that problem, what I want is the Gargoyle Soul. And the Gargoyle Soul makes you immune to petrification. So that way, I basically totally defangs that room, removes it as a potential source of danger. Almost entirely. The spikes can still kind of, like, do damage to you, and it's a little bit hairy, but it's like, it's not like you're literally rolling the dice, seeing if... It's not like you're, like, playing fucking Russian roulette, which is kind of what it feels like otherwise. If I just skipped that room, if I wasn't going for 100% map completion, I wouldn't have to do this. But this little section here, where I farm the gargoyles, ends up being absolutely ridiculous. And I actually did cut out a lot of the footage of this already, because I knew I didn't want to subject you guys to, like, the Medusa hell and the gargoyle hell both in a row. So let's see how long this takes. Well, after a review of the full gargoyle footage, which I actually edited out most of, I farmed the gargoyles for about 9 minutes straight before the soul finally dropped. I don't really know. I don't know, like, what to say about that, because on the one hand, is that getting picked up? The fuck even is that? It sounds like there's a fucking spaceship or something outside, and I can't see anything. Okay, wow, that's a great way to start off this part of the fucking commentary. Great. Whatever. Anyway, I don't know how to evaluate that, right? Because on the one hand, you know, do I have to go for 100% map completion, no deaths? No. So, do I have to farm the Gargoyle Soul? No. I think, so this isn't like Circle the Moon, where if you want to, like, beat the bosses consistently, you absolutely, and, like, beating the bosses consistently is not, like, some kind of, like, ancillary artificial challenge. That's just a core part of the game, right? So it's not like Circle of the Moon, but I think that my problem really with the farming in this game, as I started to say earlier, is really more of like a philosophical one. Like, why, when you, okay, let me, when an item is like a powerful item is like a low drop chance, right? All the game is asking you to do in order to attain that item is to expend time getting it, right? And that just kind of really bothers me, because it's not like it's not like a challenge to overcome. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, I mean, there are some people who think that, like, oh, this is actually a funny little room. I'm going to talk about this for a second. You have to do, like, inputs as prompted by the little cherubs up there in order to not have the platform be destroyed. And if the platform is destroyed, then you have to fight these things and get back out, which I think I actually might fuck up on the last one. Or on this one, maybe? Let's find out. No? Okay. Because I don't think I'm going to fuck this one up. Okay, good. Wow. Yeah, that's like kind of a toss-up. In the runs that I did, it's like sometimes I would do that perfectly and sometimes I would fuck it up. Yeah, the one in the middle that I skipped is the one with all the gargoyle, with all the Medusa heads and the spikes that I just want to save for the end, I guess. Because even if I'm immune to petrification, spikes still do about 100 damage. So if I just like completely shit the bed, I can still die in that room. I can't really die in this room. And I'm waiting until after the boss fight because I'm expecting to get at least one more level out of this. Oh, and this is what I was farming the Medusa head for. The Medusa head soul for, rather, is for phase 2 of this boss. It just makes it safer, just makes it easier. And I'll talk more about farming, like, philosophy after I kill this boss, after I talk about this boss. So this boss is actually really hard. And it's hard because I honestly think that it's not very good at, like, his fists have a bad habit of just kind of, like, floating into you after he attacks. This is not, everything that I'm getting hit by so far in this fight is, like, my fault. Like, I'm just not, because this also, like, this wasn't, like, usually his fists are not, like, desynced like this, but for some reason this time they were. And, the consequence was that I was caught off guard and I almost died. So that was actually pretty fucking scary, but what I was gonna say about that boss, it never really ended up being demonstrated, but sometimes his fists have a bad habit of, like, kind of floating into you after he's already executed an attack, it's like you can feel like you dodged an attack, but really his fists are gonna, like, keep moving and, like kind of drift into you, which is pretty annoying. It's this guy again. What's this guy's deal? Oh my god. It's Julius Belmont, so there is a Belmont in this game. The guy who finally killed Dracula, apparently. Hmm. So I looked this up actually a little bit between when I do these very long commentaries, I can't do them all in one sitting because my voice just doesn't last for that long. I don't usually like talk very much, so even going like an hour at a time is pretty strenuous for my vocal cords. But I did actually look this up between the last section of the commentary and this one, like what the deal is with Graham. Apparently, everybody on the planet, this is like a Dawn of Sorrow thing. Everybody who was born at the same time that Dracula died has like Dracula powers. Like apparently, that's what it said, which is pretty fucking weird because Soma is like 18 or like 17 or something, so presumably he wasn't born when Dracula died, but he's like the resurrection of Dracula, so I guess Dracula's soul, what? Like, was just floating around for a little bit? Resurrection of Dracula is not quite... I don't know, man. The whole plot for this game is fucking weird. Yeah, so if I hadn't farmed the Gargoyle Soul, I would have died, like, 2 seconds into this room. Because in this room, every time a Medusa head petrifies you, you're probably going to take about 200 damage. That's just kind of the reality you have to deal with when you get in here. The claim Solus also makes this room a hell of a lot easier. Like super fast overhand swing is like just so fucking important. And that's the last time I'm ever going to use it. Actually, I think I am going to put it back on. I'm going to go back into the clock tower at a certain point to get a weapon that only becomes available after once you get the giant bat. Once you get the bat soul. And I want that weapon for a couple of boss fights at the very end. And that's pretty much it. Also, note, I had the fucking Lucky Charm on during the entire giant fist fight. And I think this is another farming section that I actually didn't edit out. So yeah, I need the Succubus Soul if I want to get the best ending. If I want to see the last few bosses of the game. Again, it's like, it's very annoying. It's like... I don't think it makes any sense to just tell the player, you know, you don't have to like do anything particularly special. You just have to spend a random span of time fighting these enemies in order to get this particular reward. But you might say, well, Shovatar, what about things like the Crissaegrim, right? Like the Crissaegrims like in Symphony of the Night, or even like the Valmanway in Aria of Sorrow, right? It's like, aren't those weapons are like way too good. They're so overpowered. You can't just give the player those weapons for free. I agree. But what I'm asking is, why do those weapons need to be in the game in the first place? Do you know what I mean? Like, if a weapon is so powerful that you've decided you don't want to give it to the player unless they farm for it for like 45 minutes, why is it in the game? Right? Like, I mean, I guess it's... I think I just have a different outlook. I think I just have like a different philosophy where I think to them the idea of like a random drop is exciting. Where it's like, oh, people will keep playing the games to get like and see like different things. Maybe it's like a replay value thing. But Symphony of the Night doesn't really have any replay value in my opinion. And plus what's happening right now doesn't even that same logic doesn't apply because I need the Succubus Soul. The Succubus Soul is really good, and to be totally honest, I would probably farm it anyway, because, as you can see, now every attack I'm doing is healing me. Much better healing soul than the giant worm soul that tells you to fucking stand still. But my point is that, why did I have to do that? Like, I'm gonna get the soul either way. So why am I being forced to get the soul through this option that just takes more time. Like, I mean, that little area, I mean, I will admit, things were looking a little hairy there for a second, when the succubus kept, like, attacking me when I wasn't expecting it to, but I was never really in any serious danger there. If I ever really felt like I was gonna die, I could have just backed up and gone to the save station. So, I just don't get it. I think this is like a... Because I saw some post once about Dawn... it was about Dawn of Sorrow, but I guess it applies to Aria of Sorrow too, where people were saying, like... Because it was a ROM hack that I saw that increases, like, drop chances in Dawn of Sorrow. And somebody said something about, like, well, you know, maybe the drop chances are a little low, but you want to make sure people are still earning these drops. Like, you want to make sure that they're not just being given these abilities for free. And I'm like, I just fundamentally disagree with that mindset. I don't see, like, earn it how? By attacking, by, like, just killing the same enemy over and over again in a completely risk-free environment? Like, why does that matter? What difference does it make? All you've done by making a story-required ability the result of random chance is you're just subtracting a random span of the player's portion of the player's lifespan devoted to, in this case, farming gargoyles or farming succubi. The gargoyle farming I'm not going to be too like hard on the game for, because I only did that shit because it was part of a very specific, because I was setting a very specific list of constraints for myself, like no items, so I can't, like, so if I get fucked up in the Medusa head room, I can't just like chug a potion and get on with it. No deaths, so like if I were to die in there, I would have just fucked up like 2 hours of my life, 2.5 hours, however long it's been so far. But at the same time, it's symptomatic of a philosophy that I just sort of disagree with at its foundation, which is this idea that if you want a particular ability that the game is making available to you, then instead of the game just giving it to you, you should have to waste a random amount of time to get it. I don't know, man. I just don't agree with that. Like, I mean, would it be so bad if, because if you cordon off certain souls with a lower drop chance, all you're really saying is that there are some souls that are good and some souls that are bad. And you're telling people that if they want the souls that are actually good, then they just have to waste more time. Like, what's the point of that? I don't get it. And I'm going to try not to belabor this point too much, but I just want to make it clear why, even though the farming in Aria of Sorrow is not that bad, it's definitely, like, it's downright merciful compared to the Circle of the Moon, but I just wanted to make it clear why it still bothers me. Is that getting picked up now, too? Well, there's a tank rolling through town, apparently. These fucking trucks have been going for like 2 hours. This shit woke me up. This is the authentic experience, guys. This is how I'm gonna fill time while I have nothing to talk about. This room is pretty interesting. I guess I'll talk about this room, which is that it's cool that there's no music. It sort of signifies that this room is important. No, this is fucking funny. Yeah, there's a gun in this game. I couldn't fucking believe it when I first saw the handgun weapon. Because I'd forgotten that the game was supposed to take place in 2035, because there's no there's no indication of that beyond just the fact that the game tells you that and the fact that there are zombie soldiers throwing grenades at you. You might think, but Shovitar, what about like Soma Cruz's outfit? Soma Cruz is wearing like blue jeans. To which I would reply, Chad Belmont in Castlevania Bloodlines is wearing blue jeans too. Castlevania protagonists past a certain point dress pretty fucking weird. So like Soma could be dressed this way and the game could say this is taking place in the year 1300 and I probably wouldn't blink. See, this is so bad because I actually meant to explore that little passageway back there, but I just forgot to. Because there is a piece of armor back there, but it's worthless. It's worthless because the Eversing is available at that point, so no point. Oh, if you're curious to know if the gun is actually good, it's not pretty much. The problem with the gun is that it doesn't do any damage. It has a long range, but what's fucked up is that the range is actually shorter than you would think. It doesn't just like hit enemies that are on the screen. You have to be like close enough to them. Also, if you're wondering what that shooting star at the top of the screen was there, it's an enemy that so there's a rabbit that can freeze time that shows up later in the game, and you can farm its soul to get an ability that... Oh, it's a street cleaning truck. Okay, well, I guess somebody's got to keep the streets clean. I'm not going to do it. It's a spell that freezes time, and what you have to do is you have to, like... You can freeze time, and that little shooting star that showed up is like a little thing, and then you can farm that thing's soul to get a soul, and then its soul does like something that's not really that good. So, in case you were curious, it's the saddest room in the entire game. This part of the game I could really kind of... I think that the underground waterway, the sewers section, is probably about twice as big as it needs to be. This whole area that I'm going through is sort of worthless, in my opinion. Because it involves... It doesn't feel great to like not have the third soul that you want to have on and have to put on the fucking Skulla soul to walk around down here. And like the fucking water like fucking up my rhythm, my like mojo. I'm not a fan, I gotta say. I'm also not a fan of those enemies. I don't know if you've noticed how I've had to fight those guys, but I basically have to just sit there and wait until they attack me and then attack them. There's nothing fun about waiting. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Waiting and farming. All that being said, I do see why people... I see why people love this game. And I think I've already said that, but I just kind of want to... I want to make more of an effort to moderate... not moderate, but to accompany my complaints with reassurances that I do not think that this game is shit. Because ever since my Super Castlevania 4 hard mode commentary, where I spent the whole time basically complaining, I'm paranoid about letting my negativity color over my I don't know. This is when I decided to sit down and talk. So this is just how it's gonna be. I guess. I thought they'd be done by now, because they woke me up 2 hours ago. So I thought I could just sit down and do this, but I guess they're not done yet. Uh, shouldn't complain, public service and all that. Anyway, yeah, I love this game. I think I would have, it's kind of like Circle of the Moon, where I think going for 100% map completion makes the game less fun, because it incentivizes more farming. Because in Circle of the Moon, I actually think that the best way to play Circle of the Moon is Magician mode, no arena. Because that literally completely removes the farming element from the game. Because in Circle of the Moon, there are these like magical cards you have to acquire. I may have already talked about this a little bit. I mean, well, I have. I've talked about Circle of the Moon extensively. I mean, I may have already talked about this a little bit in this video. Excuse me. Sorry. In Circle of the Moon, there are like these magical cards you have to acquire, and Magician mode lets you start off with all of them from the start, meaning you don't have to farm for any of them. And that, I think, is like the most interesting way to play the game, because number one, it means no farming, and number two, you start off the game with a lot more options. And you can, like, experiment with different things, see how they work, and, like, take advantage of spells that you would probably never be able to in a regular run of the game. The alternate mode in Aria of Sorrow, there's only one alternate mode, it's the Julius mode, which is pretty fun. But I'm gonna wait to talk about that, because I have a whole Julius mode run and a whole video that I'll be commentating about that. What's up here? Oh, this is where the second hint book is, yeah. Right. You know what's crazy, too? Like another, in terms of like the most fun ways to play this game, is playing playing like the end game without the claim solace. If you're stuck with the fucking fire sword from the arena, or like, or worse, like you're trying to go through this whole part of the game with the ice brand, because you could do that. It's fucking miserable. Like, it's actually insane how much better the claim solace makes the late game. And it's so fucked up because it's hidden behind like a breakable wall that you wouldn't. It's hidden in the forbidden area, which is weird to get to in the first place, and then it's hidden behind a breakable wall in the forbidden area. And but it's like it's like what makes the late game like playable. It's so fucked up. I actually don't even know how you get the Valmanway in Aria of Sorrow. I don't remember what you have to farm for it. Oh no, you get it? Okay, well, this is actually pretty fucking stupid. The Valmanway, So you remember what I said a while ago when I was talking about, like, really powerful weapons? When I asked the question of, like, you know, if this weapon is so good, if it's so good that you're terrified that the player might actually get it, then why even put it in the game? That's kind of what the Valmanway is like in Aria of Sorrow, where the only way you can get the Valmanway is by beating the boss rush in under 4 minutes, and the boss rush only gets unlocked for a particular save file after you beat the game. So, like, you can only use the Valmanway in a save file where the game's already been beaten, which actually... Okay, there's this weird mechanic in Aria of Sorrow that I never really engaged with because I don't care, where it's like it's like kind of like a new game plus, where like you can start the game over from the beginning, but with all of the souls that you got in your first run. Which, I mean, I guess that's one way to cut down on farming, is just play the game once, farm the souls you need, and then play the game again without farming. And I want to say you can also hold on to, like, the weapons that you get in the New Game Plus. The thing about that though is that just sounds like a recipe for making yourself overpowered, because like the Triton Soul, for example, that I got earlier in this little clip earlier in this section, that increases that the souls that increase your stats don't increase them by a percentage, they increase them by a flat amount. So like a Triton Soul, that's like 16 strength at the very start of the game, probably makes you like really, really strong. Oh, this song is so sick. Like the whole like part of what makes early game difficult is the fact that you're not that strong, and it just sounds like a recipe for, I don't know why they included that mechanic or that feature. I guess just so people could just have fun being overpowered, probably. Because New Game Plus doesn't make the game harder at all. At least not according to what I read about it. I think it was just a way to give the game some replay value. Because something that Igarashi said when he was developing Symphony of the Night all the way back in the day was that he wanted a game that people could play for a long time, because that was sort of what was becoming not just play for a long time because it's really hard and it takes a long time to beat, but just like play for a long time because there's a lot of stuff in the game. And that's where a lot of the philosophy around Symphony of the Night arose. And I'm guessing that concept of like replayability was still pretty important to him. But although I honestly think Harmony of Dissonance has more replayability than this game. That's probably what New Game Plus is for. Now that I'm like saying that to myself, it's probably so that you can replay the game over and over again without having to like farm this shit up every single time you want to play the game again. That actually makes a lot of sense. And in fact, that might have been, well, no, because that would. I'm thinking now like maybe that's what I should have done for this like footage, so that way I didn't have to like spend any time farming and I could just go through the whole game. But that's not the experience you would have if you were like playing the game for the first time, and I wanted to sort of like, I wanted to truthfully depict the game's mechanics rather than pretending that there was no farming in this game, because there is. So I think the Sherman ring that I just got, I think that's supposed to be a shaman ring, because there's an item in Dawn of Sorrow called the shaman ring, but there it was rendered as the Sherman ring, which is pretty fucking funny. I don't remember what it does. It doesn't do anything that good, though. Look at all this violence against women. Yeah, here's the rabbit. And this part of the zone, like I said, doesn't have anything super important in it. It just has a hint book to tell you how to get the best ending. Although this whole part is like weird, because I get the brothel idea, but like why is there like children's wallpaper everywhere? You know what I mean? I don't know what brothels look like in Japan. I've never been to Japan. Oh, and for that matter, I've never been to a brothel, but I don't think they have wallpaper like that. I just don't know. I just don't know. As good as the Claim Solace is, it is sort of unrealistically large. But I guess that's the kind of thing that the Japanese like. Hey, it's a magic sword. He can swing it as fast as he wants because it's magic. Look out! Damn it. I knew that was going to happen. I could see the cat. I could see the cat falling down towards me. See, this decor is much more normal. Yeah, they kind of got progressively raunchier as the Metroidvanias went on, because there's nothing like there's not like a brothel section in Harmony of Dissonance that I can recall, and there's not in Symphony of the Night. All you really have is like there's like the Medusa boss with a huge ass, and that's like about it. But then in this game, and then in Dawn of Sorrow, it's almost even worse. Worse. I don't really care. I'm not like offended or anything. I mostly just think it's funny. Perhaps a relic of its time. I don't know if you'd necessarily see that these days. But it's a classic, you know, fictional trope, the seduction of evil. I mean, that's part of the whole vampire thing too, isn't it? The final guard. This enemy is he's a lot like the Armor Knight enemies that I fought before, but the difference is that he has one more attack that's pretty tricky. What's tricky about it is that I'm just not used to the telegraphing, so I'm not used to reacting to it. I don't like necessarily know what he's doing, because one of the things he can do is he can just like not attack you and he can just bring his shield up, but there's an attack he does where the telegraph for the attack looks very similar for the telegraph to just like bring his shield up. Yeah, like that. He'll bring his sword back, and if he brings his sword back in a particular way, it means that instead of bring his shield up, he's actually gonna like attack you. So whether or not I take damage on that fight tends to be determined by how often he does that and how often I get caught by it. And there he didn't do it at all, so it was okay. These are some cool fucking statues. You might think these are statues of something, but I don't remember seeing any bosses in any other Castlevania games that look like this. The dragon, because the dragon in Rondo doesn't look like that. The dragon in Rondo's got like kind of a long neck. Am I... Okay. I'm trying to remember what my route is, because I think I do something a little strange here. No, I think the map looked pretty finished to me. So I think what I'm just gonna do is yeah, I think I'm just gonna finish up the pinnacle here, and then let it go from there. It's so funny. I'm actually like over leveled. I'm like 4 levels higher than I usually am at this point in the game because of all the fucking gargoyle farming I had to do. It's actually fucking ridiculous. Bye. Shit, now I'm falling down. Why did I go up there? I must have changed my mind. I think I had it in my head that I wanted to maybe like come through the pinnacle in one direction and then leave it in another, to fill out the map a little bit more efficiently. But I think I'm deciding that rather than do that, after I finish up what I want to do in the pinnacle, I just want to come back down and use the warp room, rather than like taking this path out and ending up in a part of the castle that I really don't want to be in. Which I guess is fine. I have no idea, by the way, if those spears are even, like, good or not. But I'm guessing they don't do the giant overhead swing that the Claim Solace does, so it's impossible for me to believe that it's any better. Yeah, going back out this way means I have to fight one of these fuckers again. These are like, I really hate fighting these things, just because it takes so long. I don't mind fighting a boss that takes a while if the boss is interesting, but these guys are not interesting at all. And you know what? Honestly, I could actually just be flying over him with the giant bat soul, but that's not my first impulse. My first impulse is to try to kill it. And actually, these guys can drop an overhand sword called the Final Sword, which may or may not be good, but the thing is that it's a random drop. So if I wanted it, I would have to farm these guys. And why in the name of God would I ever do that? Yeah, that's the new attack. And fighting this guy can actually be kind of tricky because if he, I don't know what makes these guys back up or walk forward. It seems random, kind of like the Talos boss from Harmony of Dissonance. And if he just like stays where he starts, if he like walks forward from where he starts, then he can get you between. He can just like get you up against that pit there, and you're just kind of fucked. Satan's Ring. I don't know if I'm going to show it, but the description for Satan's Ring in the inventory is pretty funny. Do you know what it says? It says, this ring was once owned by Satan. Go figure. The only time that the word Satan has appeared in any of these games, to my knowledge. Although I'd be interested to know what it said in Japanese. I wonder if that's like a translation thing. Just die. Or really, I shouldn't be mad at the game here. I should be mad at myself for not just jumping over this asshole. But in my defense, what if he does like an overhand sword attack, like that one there? That could hit me if I try flying over him. That soul... This is another problem I have with some of the souls in Aria of Sorrow, is that some of the souls have extremely unhelpful descriptions. I talked earlier about the zombie officer soul, which sounds like a... which just doesn't make sense when you read it. It sounds like something an AI created. And that soul there, when it says guards against enemy attacks, my problem with that is that if I were to take that soul description at face value, then it would suggest that soul protects me from enemy attacks. Do you know what I mean? And I can't believe that that's true. Like, there's no way that you put on a soul and you now have, like, permanent divine shield, like you never take damage from anything. So, either it's like a button prompt to not take damage, or it doesn't actually help that much. Maybe it reduces damage by a certain percentage. It's not telling me. And I just kind of don't believe that it can be good. So I don't use it. I don't know, maybe that's like a weird, like, fucked up assumption to make, but that's always how I've reacted to that soul. It's like, I just don't believe you. I don't believe that it does what you're saying it does. The Iron Golem there, thankfully I had the good sense not to fight that thing, because that thing takes 1 damage from every attack. And I think it has more health than it should have if it's taking 1 damage from every attack. Stop jumping at it. Okay. I got a little too overexcited. You gotta respect the giant weird chicken things, Shovitar. I'm actually using the Valkyrie Soul for longer than I thought I would. I'm gonna use it until, like, the very end of the game, pretty much. Yeah, I don't really have as much to say during this part because now that you're in the end game, there's no serious challenge. The succubus soul, if you have like especially if you have a fast weapon like this, does kind of make the game like, oh, I see what I'm doing. Okay, this actually is interesting because this leads to the clock tower, and there are a couple things that I wanted to do in the clock tower after I got the bat soul, but I couldn't find a way to work them in to the route organically. So, like, I didn't want to go all the way back. Well, I did find a way to work it into the route organically by doing this, but I was having trouble incorporating them into the route. So this is what I decided to do. Okay, this is what I meant when I said that something about this route was weird. But I just forgot what it actually was. Interesting. This was smart. Or am I just... Is that all I'm doing? Okay. Okay. There's still like 2 whole rooms in the clock tower I haven't been to yet, so I was expecting to... Okay. I guess never mind. But I guess if I was going to go into the clock tower for anything, it would be just for that, because I actually need... I'm so glad that axe didn't actually hit me. I'm glad that wasn't like a real object. Because I do need Death Sickle for the next boss fight coming up. Well, I don't need it, but I want it. The long and exhaustive process of filling out parts of the map that are just big, empty space in the air. Fortunately, Aria of Sorrow only makes you do this once, unlike Symphony of the Night, which makes you do it like 3 or 4 times. And Symphony of the Night actually does make you do it, because Symphony of the Night locks the best ending behind map completion. So, like, if you can... It's not literal 200% map completion in Symphony of the Night, so there's stuff you can skip, but you can't really skip. The game just measures map completion based off of, like, every square of the map is a flat percentage, so if you skip a big section of nothing, that's still a lot of percentage that you're skipping. And I think okay, yeah, I'm doing a cut here because this is I'm gonna showcase the worst ending first. And then I'm gonna go through the other 2 endings. There's really only 2 endings, because one of the endings is kind of goofy, but you're gonna see it, and you're gonna see what I mean by that. The Tear of Blood is one of the best accessories you can get in the game. I think it just kind of buffs your stats by a lot, and it's only really competing with the Rune Ring, which is what I picked up down in the caverns, and the Rune Ring increases the rate at which your MP restores, which is what you usually for me is what I want. Because using MP, jeez. Oh my god, he said bastard. No wonder this game was rated T. Generally speaking, MP is like is useful. More useful than like a few extra points of like attack or defense. Especially with something as good as the Valkyrie Soul, which I should actually probably be... Well, no, this is fine. This is fine. This is definitely not like optimal. Like I feel like jumping over the magma balls like that and like missing out on a couple of swings is probably not optimal, but whatever. This fight's not that hard. Now it gets a little trickier. Because now you have to sort of figure out the right positioning for not getting hit by these balls. And actually the hardest part for me was, it's going to come up right here, that part in the cycle, because I had a bad habit of jumping on top of the magma ball before it had fully gone under the floor. So getting a little bit hasty, and this is what I wanted Death's Scythe for, because I said Claim Solace was too big, but look at this shit. This fight is actually really interesting, because it's a lot like the Galamoth fights from Kid Dracula. Both in the Famicom version and the Game Boy version, where it's basically this very claustrophobic and tight positioning check, where there's like only a very specific part of the screen where you can be in at any given time. Death's Sickle makes it so way easier because you don't have to worry about ever basically being endangered by the big hands, because you can just stay ducked under them the whole time. If you don't have Death's Sickle, you have to like jump to hit his weak spot, which is like way more risky. Yeah, this is the first ending right here. And unfortunately, I don't have any like footage of that fight on Soma of fighting that guy without Death's Sickle. But if you watch my Julius mode video, you'll see what a more normal version of that fight looks like. I don't know, Mina. I feel like there might be more endings to the video game. Hey, it's good that they give you a hint, right? You wouldn't want the ending to be like completely hidden. And I think I'm going to let the whole credits play here because there's a little like lineup of the cast at the end of the credits, and the lineup looks different based on whether you get this ending or if you get the worst ending or the bad ending. It's the lineup is, excuse me, sorry. The lineup is only partial, but if you get the best ending, then the lineup is like every character in the game. So I think I just left this in here to demonstrate that. This is a more satisfying ending, I will say, than the endings to the bad endings for Symphony of the Night, especially, or Harmony of Dissonance. In Harmony of Dissonance, the bad endings are like your friend is dead, and then in Symphony of the Night, the bad ending is like Richter's dead and everything sucks. In this game, it's just kind of like, you know what it feels like? It feels kind of like sequel bait. It feels like Soma says, oh, we destroyed that enemy, but Dracula's castle is still there, and we might go back to it, which is actually fitting, because Dawn of Sorrow is bizarrely a sequel to this game. Even though the canon ending to this game, the definitive ending to this game, makes it like feel pretty sequel-proof, in my opinion, but I think that they wanted to... Well, I'm not going to talk too much more about Dawn of Sorrow until I actually get to it, but... There it is, the first of the 3 endings. And now we will go on to the other ones, and you are unfortunately going to have to see that boss fight again. Sorry. Sorry, but also kind of not sorry, because the thing about... Another thing that makes the endings to Aria of Sorrow different from the endings to Symphony of the Night is sort of the gameplay consequences. Like, if you get the bad ending in Symphony of the Night, you've sort of now insulated yourself from what is, in my opinion, the most obnoxious part of the entire game, that being the reverse castle. Navigating the reverse castle is really just not very fun. You deprive yourself of a lot of some neat boss fights. The Medusa with the big ass, Shaft, Dracula, of course, which I never learned properly. By contrast, getting the bad ending in Aria of Sorrow deprives you of, I think, some really, really cool encounters, which I'm not gonna talk about until they happen, because I'm gonna have a lot to say about them. Yeah, here's me doing the fight again, and this time putting on the Tear of Blood because I realized that last time I didn't ever use any NP. Here's me making a point of looking at the 3 books to establish what 3 souls I'm gonna put on when I fight Grant. Graham. Sorry. Grant does not end this game. This is not Dracula's curse, unfortunately. I wish it was. And for some reason okay, good. I was afraid I was going to let that whole cutscene happen again, but I thought better of it. And actually the reason I put on the Tear of Blood was not because I didn't use MP last time, but because I'm not going to use any MP this time. I don't think. The Flame Demon Soul is not as good as the Nightmare Soul or the Valkyrie Soul. It's not bad. It does kind of what you want a soul, like an unused soul to do in this game, which is just attack something far away from you. In those terms, it's perfectly serviceable, but fire damage is not a particularly useful attribute, I don't think, and it's not as fast as Nightmare. It doesn't really do the same kind of damage, I don't think. Maybe if all three, because it shoots out 3 fireballs, like Alucard Hellfire or like the Dracula fireballs in general. I guess maybe if all 3 fireballs hit something, then that might, make it do like Nightmare damage or Valkyrie damage, but I don't know. Oh, this is different. I like it when Graham says, basically, I am Dracula. Like I almost wanted to include that in the thumbnail, but I decided against it because it's funnier in context. It's funnier if it's like you see someone who's clearly not Dracula saying that they are Dracula. And if you're curious how to do this fight without this, I may have already said this, but watch my Julius mode video when I post it, and you'll see what like a normal version of this fight looks like. I never noticed that the halo is like going through the eyes of the 2 like ladies that make up this body. That's an interesting little touch. And I guess there's bloody tears in the background. They keep doing that. Uh-oh, this is bad. What's going on here? Somar, you okay, dude? Look at all that blood on the stairs. Oh no, now he's all fucked up. I have mixed feelings about this element of the Aria of Sorrow, Dawn of Sorrow storyline. On the one hand, they sort of sidestep the issue of bringing back Dracula after Symphony of the Night. Well, not really, because they established that he came back in 1999, but you can pretend that the 1999 thing doesn't exist in the storyline at all and nothing really changes, in my opinion anyway. I guess it would explain why Alucard is running around. But this is a weird thing that Aria of Sorrow establishes. The idea that somehow Dracula's soul can reincarnate or can regenerate. I mean, it's a clever way to get around the fact that you're making a Castlevania game and you don't have Dracula in it, because that is a problem. Because when you think Castlevania, you think problem. This conversation is going on for so fucking long. Okay, good, it's over. Black Panther is like a really good well, you'll see what it does. Look at that shit. Beautiful. I fucking love it. This needs to be in more Castlevania games, in my opinion. Yeah, on the one hand, establishing the whole reincarnation of Dracula thing is a cool way to get around not having Dracula in your Castlevania game, but on the other hand, it kind of makes the idea of... I mean, so how does it work? So does that mean that when Soma dies, then, like, someone else is gonna get the soul again? And, like, why is this happening? Is it just because Dracula's, like, so evil that he... I don't know, because I don't really get... If you're gonna have a... Because, okay, here, like, Castlevania's story... Castlevania's gameplay is so rock solid that I don't think... that like, that's more important to me than whether or not Dracula is in the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, when people think Castlevania, they think Dracula, and Dracula being involved in it in some capacity is what you would expect. But The ending of Symphony of the Night is so good that I don't think I could, like, I wouldn't be upset if Dracula never physically appeared in the game again. The point that I'm laboriously trying to get across is that it's possible to not have Dracula or a reincarnation of Dracula be in the video game, because Dracula's curse, although I didn't understand this is what was happening at the time, established as, and this game reinforces the idea that Dracula's powers came from a larger source of just sort of elemental evil. And I don't see any particular reason why that source can't manifest in someone who's not Dracula, unless that's what this is, unless that's what this means. And this is just like a weird translation thing where the implication is that he's just the next Lord of Darkness. He's not literally a reincarnation of Dracula, but the way that it sounds and the way that things are presented in Dawn of Sorrow reinforces the idea that that's what he is. Although, again, that could be a translation thing, because I've only ever played the English version, but my point is that it's weird. It's a weird compromise. That's what it feels like, a compromise between having Dracula come back and not having Dracula come back. Yeah, I didn't do these earlier because I didn't want to go through this part without the Gargoyle Soul, and because the bat, as you can see, greatly simplifies this platforming section. And I'll be a monkey's uncle if I ever have to jump across swinging platforms over spikes ever again. I've had about enough of that in my time. I don't know. I guess I'm okay with it. I guess I would prefer if the language was less around. It did not make the implication that he is like Dracula again, and was more just like, this is the next locus of dark power. It just manifested in you. I do wonder. See, that fucking 1999 thing is so dumb. Because there's just no reason for that story element to exist. Like, you could take that out and nothing about the story would change. I guess Julius wouldn't have amnesia, but, like, whatever. Yeah, this is me doing my walk of shame, where I forgot to get this hallway when I meant to get it, and so I have to go back at this weird part in the route. Go out of my way, teleport out of my way just to do this one thing, which I don't like doing, but that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. I also wish that I could have Black Panther on the whole time, but unfortunately I cannot. Well, I guess I could if I wanted to... Oh, I don't have the... Huh. I thought I had the Gargoyle Soul on. Usually whenever the Medusa heads are involved, I have the Gargoyle Soul on. Why am I teleporting up here? Shouldn't I be teleporting to get to the Skyway? Or not the Skyway, I'm thinking Harmony of Dissonance. The fucking Floating Gardens, whatever it's called. Where the hell am I going? Maybe this is the fastest way to the gardens. Is it? I'm confused. I'm confusing myself. Man, Aria of Sorrow really does look amazing. It's just a shame about these particular gameplay elements. The soul farming, for one thing. I don't know who was so... I don't know why people were... I don't know why that was such an why that idea was so attractive to the people who designed this. And I know that they loved it. I know they thought it was a great idea, because they did it again in Dawn of Sorrow. Oh, I'm going... Oh, see? Alright, I'm cleverer than I thought. I forgot. This is how you fucking get to the clock tower in the first place. You go through the, the Skyway. The Skyway, the Floating Gardens. As if I have to call it by the right name, or else you won't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I think that Aria of Sorrow's storyline problems come less from the specifics of the whole Soma as reincarnation thing, and more from the fact that there's just so much talking. And a lot of the talking that exists in this game is to set up the whole 1999 thing, which, again, I'll say it for the 5th time, goes nowhere and has no bearing on the story. And it's just... narratively superfluous is the best way that I can express my feelings on that element. But now I really am just repeating myself. I guess I'm also not clear on, because the way Soma talks in the throne room, it's like he's Dracula now. But wouldn't Dracula be really mad at Alucard? Because Alucard, well, fuck, I guess maybe in 1999 they hashed everything out. This fucking weird event just squatting in the middle of the new timeline and making everything bizarre. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to be a backseat narrative designer, you know. Yeah, this is the shit. Now that I have the fucking super jump and the Black Panther soul, now I'm zooming around. It reminds me of playing as Maria in Rondo, where it's like there's just like almost always something you can do to go faster. That was fucking sick. I wish I could say that was intentional, but I just happened to jump there. Okay, I finally discovered everything. Now I can go down into the There's no reason to save here, Shovatar. Attaboy. That guy right there is actually kind of tough to fight. You have to like slide kick underneath him if you just try to run away from him, because he does like a jump dive kick thing. It's actually pretty hard to do it. And I'm equipping all this shit because there's going to be a boss fight coming up in a second here when I go through this door. And I've given this game a lot of shit. I've given this game a lot of shit for the narrative, for the dialogue, for the gameplay in certain spots, even though I try to leave the caveat that the soul farming is only really terrible if you go for 100% map completion. But this fight right here is like the coolest shit I've ever seen in a video game, maybe ever. This is the best boss fight in the entire series. It succeeds in pulling off okay. There's a certain genre of boss fight in Castlevania games, where it's like instead of fighting a big monster, you fight someone who's like basically your size and is like fighting in a way that you fight. The first iteration of this is the doppelganger in Dracula's Curse, and there, of course, it's a horrible failure. The AI is not advanced enough to avoid getting tripped up on very simple like problems, and the doppelganger is also just very hard to conventionally fight, because you don't... Fighting someone who's exactly like you in a game like that, where mobility is so rudimentary, and where he does so much more damage than you, it means that, like, there's just no good way to fight him, so it ends up becoming, like, more of a puzzle boss where you try to find a way to cheese the fight instead of actually doing it. Second attempt at a fight like that, which I'm just going to call doppelganger-type fights, would, of course, be Belmont's Revenge, I think. Belmont's Revenge was 91, I think? Belmont's Revenge, you had the Solel fight, which was a good boss fight. I actually liked that fight a lot, but it had a similar problem where the AI was very rudimentary, and it ended up being more of a puzzle boss where there's like a very specific sequence of actions you can take to fight him, and also that game, you're moving so fucking slow, so it doesn't exactly have the high-octane fight feel that I think it's supposed to. Chronicles X68 doppelganger fight, kind of the same thing. You can just crouch and whip him. Not quite there yet. Symphony of the Night doppelganger fight, better. Same with the Richter fight, which I would categorize as the same kind of fight as this. Both definitely improvements on the concept, but the problem there is just Symphony of the Night's overall low difficulty, where they don't feel particularly dangerous. Neither of those fights, under normal circumstances, of course. The Maxime fight in Harmony of Dissonance is really harrowing and really tough, but it also, I think, creates some pretty... It kind of forces you into making... there's only a couple of decisions, there's only a couple of ways to really deal with that fight effectively, which have more to do with sub-weapon tools and choices, and less to do with moment-to-moment gameplay, so it ends up being more like the Dracula's Curse doppelganger, where it's kind of like a puzzle boss. This shit right here is fucking amazing from beginning to end. Because Julius, comes at you consistently. He can't get easily cheesed, as far as I know anyway. And you have the tools to fight him in a way that's fair, that being the Black Panther soul. He's also terrifying. You guys didn't see it here because I played correctly, I got a no damage kill, but if he had actually ever hit me with anything, it would have done 150, I'm pretty sure. Maybe more. And again, the Julius fight is similar to the Maxime fight, where the problem is distance, the problem is maintaining distance on him, but unlike the Maxime fight, he doesn't have any equivalent to the clone attack, which means that you can only fight him with a couple of pre-selected tools. Instead, you have to just actually fight him normally, which makes for a boss fight that's much more dynamic and exciting. And his boss fight music is fucking amazing too. I've said before that Aria of Sorrow has really high points and really low points as far as the soundtrack is concerned. That is the highest high point. When the fucking Heart of Fire part comes in, it's sublime. It's so wonderful. And Aria of Sorrow goes to great lengths, I think a little bit too much, to address a problem, a sort of a hypothetical problem that I talked about when I talked about Symphony of the Night, which was the way that Symphony of the Night treats the Belmonts via the Belmont featured in the game. In Symphony of the Night, Richter is in the game, and he's basically like a fuck-up. He gets kidnapped by Shaft, he didn't do what Belmonts are supposed to do, which is just defeat the whatever evil force emerges, and of course he loses to Richter in the Richter fight, if you don't go for the good endings. And then after the endings are over, Richter goes, oh, I'm too, fucked up from the fight. Alucard, does the fucking Valkyrie have a boob jiggle? I did not notice that until it, freeze-framed there during the Valkyrie animation, but I think the little blue Valkyrie that gets someone to use the spell, I think her boobs jiggled. This game is fucking crazy. Anyway, like I was saying, Richter in Symphony of the Night is not, he's not the heroic archetype that the Belmonts are typically portrayed as. And while that, I think, was actually fine for the narrative that Symphony of the Night was aiming for, I did express in my videos that I wonder how people reacted to that at the time, and if that were done today, how people would react to that. Because today people are very protective of their legacy heroes and are very sort of sharp and on the lookout for people doing basically what Symphony of the Night was doing, which was saying, oh, here's our cool, hot new character who's totally better than the established characters. And I'm aware that Alucard in Symphony of the Night was not actually a new character. I know he's in Dracula's Curse, but Dracula's Curse Alucard is so different from Symphony of the Night Alucard, both in appearance and in gameplay style, that they might as well be different characters. It's very hard for me to synthesize the Dracula's Curse Alucard with the Symphony of the Night Alucard. And I don't know if I'm the only one, but that's just how I feel. But in Aria of Sorrow, they go out of their way to establish, oh, Julius Belmont, of the Belmont clan, he's so strong, he's so amazing. More so in Dawn of Sorrow than in this game, honestly, and I should really stop talking about Dawn of Sorrow before it's time to, but this is relevant to my larger point. And but more importantly than anything anybody ever says, in the context of the gameplay in Aria of Sorrow, the fact that Julius hits you so hard, and I actually almost wish I had gotten hit by him, to demonstrate that point better, is sort of a gameplay way of showing you how strong and how dangerous he is. Which is how things like that should be conveyed, if possible. Ironically, harder on normal mode, because what I did in that fight with the Death Sickle is really like a Death Sickle only strategy, and the Death Sickle is not available on normal mode. If you want to fight him on normal mode, you either have to be super... There's a couple ways to do it. You can either be super cautious, dip in with, I guess the Claymore, but that's pretty dangerous. I honestly feel like the safest strategy to fight him in normal mode would probably just be to never ever use an attack on him, like a normal melee attack, and probably only fight him with your magic, because I just have a hard time seeing in what circumstances it could be safe to close range them. This part of this zone is actually really dangerous, and it's mostly for that reason, because those guys are tricky to avoid. They don't really move in ways that make sense. They have a bad habit of, as soon as you're ready to hit them, they'll like zoom away from you. And these bitches also, I don't know if you counted there, but that was about 240 damage. She did 60 damage 5 times, so about 300 damage minus 290 damage, I think, is what that was. So 123, 290. These are some really dangerous enemies. And that's another thing that I appreciate about Aria of Sorrow, is that it does not have a dramatic reverse difficulty curve, which is a tough thing to avoid in games like this. They really keep the pressure up to the very end, because the Belmont fight is pretty hard. The hardest fight in the game, I would say, except for maybe the Headhunter, just because Phase 3 of the Headhunter is impossible to predict. And now we're going into the final boss, which has 2 endings associated with it, and I think I'm going to pause here to set up. Yeah, yeah, you'll see the first of the 2 available endings, and I think I'm actually going to skip the conversation at the start before I do. Yeah, I think yeah. So, and you'll see why I'm doing this and why this is like weird in a second here. The way that you get the first bad ending, or the second bad ending, the intermediate ending in Aria of Sorrow, is to just get killed by the final boss. So I'm just going to stand here and let him kill me. So sorry everybody, this technically isn't a deathless run. I am about to die here, but I'm only dying to show you guys what all the endings are. Because it's a neat little... I don't know if you'd call it an Easter egg, or maybe you'd call it like a consolation prize for dying to this boss or something. Here it is. Oh no. Soma has now become Dracula because he lost to the magic spinning wheel. And now Julius is back for the rematch. Fade to Black. Yeah, that's pretty fun. That's a neat little touch. And I'm not going to let these credits play out all the way, am I? Oh god, do I really? Why did I do this? I don't know why I'm letting these credits play all the way. I guess to give myself time to talk about that ending. I already said everything. I think it's neat. It's a nice payoff, although it's not... Don't talk about Dawn of Sorrow. Don't talk about Dawn of Sorrow. I'll say what I said before. Consolation prize for dying to that boss, because and as you can see, that boss also hits pretty hard. I was taking like what 175 there, and then like 230 from the big dragon. And I'll explain what's going on in that fight when I get back to it again. But like I said, the game is dangerous to the very end. And keep in mind, this has over-leveled me. This is like the highest level I've ever done this fight, because of the fucking ridiculous gargoyle farm. So it would be doing even more damage if I was at a more normal level. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering which pieces of the soundtrack I think are boring as shit, I would say the Demon Guest House music is really, really snore-inducing. I don't really like the Caverns music either. Or the Forbidden Area, if that has different music. I can't even fucking remember. Also, Image of Soma with Mina is not accurate to the events of this ending, Konami. Soma gets fucking killed, or I guess becomes evil. I don't really know what the outcome of that fictional fight is purported to be. Interesting. So I put on the Tear of Blood here and I take off the Rune Ring because as much as the design of this boss fight is intriguing to me, and I like this boss. I always had a hard time finding anything to do with my MP during the second phase. And during the... Oh, this is such a fucking anime-ass sequence. I almost don't even want to say anything over this. I just want to let you guys appreciate what's happening. Maybe the real Aria of Sorrow was the friends that we made along the way. Anyway, here's the fight again, for real this time. So this fight's actually pretty interesting. You lose all of your soul powers, and the 3 orbs correspond to each type of soul that you lost. So if you break the red guy first, you get your red soul, but you get your bullet souls back, your like activation souls. Blue one first, you get your blue souls back. Yellow one, you get your yellow souls back. The order... I'm not really taking that into account when I decide which one of these to fight first. I'm just killing the most dangerous one first, and then leaving the other ones for the last. Kind of. I kill the red one first because the red one is the most dangerous and his projectiles are the hardest to avoid. I actually leave the dragon up to the very end. The reason that I do that is because, for one thing, the dragon is not super difficult to dodge. If he's the only thing happening on the screen, you just have to remember where the 3 places are that he tends to spawn and make sure that you're far away from the bald dude when he reaches those 3 places. There's like one spot on the right, one spot on the left, and then one spot like up towards the top, and just be smart about that. But the reason that I save the blue soul for last is because the yellow soul gives me back the succubus soul. And that way, if I do happen to take damage at some point during this phase, I get back the succubus soul, and I can fight the blue orb guy while I have the succubus soul on to get that health back. That didn't end up happening here, of course, but all the same, that was just the safest way to do it, because I don't know if I'm going to get out of that phase taking damage or not until the phase is actually over. So it's not like I can say, oh, the red guy is dead, now I'm going to target the blue guy. I can still get hit by the blue guy at that point in time. This phase of the fight is very interesting. It's basically dependent on how much of an asshole the Bone Serpent wants to be. Because this spot over here, basically if the Serpent starts coming to where you are, he can force you out of a safe spot or out of a position you want to be in, and into spots you don't want to be in. And that sounds like common sense, but that's just what happens. Because the way that and it's kind of a consequence of the way that I choose to deal with the yellow spike attack, which is the way you're supposed to deal with the yellow spike attack is to get underneath the orb and then move away from where the spikes come out first and go to where the spikes come out. You'll see, I'm going to do it here in a second. Yeah, that's how you're supposed to deal with it, but what I like to do instead is go to one of those 2 safe spots on the left or the right and then hit the eyes in a spot that lets me dodge the spikes. And that can become a problem because you can get locked in the situation where the spikes are coming out and the dragon is coming at you, and you either move out of the way of the spikes and get hit by the dragon, or you just stay still. You move out of the way of the dragon and get hit by the spikes, or you stay still and you get hit by the dragon, and that can be a big problem. What's important to figure out in this fight is a hierarchy of what you can and cannot get hit by. Like, if you're in danger of getting hit by multiple things at once, which attack should you take? And I would say that the highest priority is don't get hit by the green ball that the dragon spits out. That does like 250, 260. And then the lowest, then the tiny orbs that get shoot out, the slow ones that float around that I was hitting there, those things also do a ton of damage. Those are very high priority to avoid. The spike damage, not that bad. Getting hit by the actual serpent himself, not that bad. And there's an interesting little interaction between the Bone Serpent and the Succubus Soul here, which is that, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend going for this, but it's worth knowing that this is an option available to you. If you hit the Bone Serpent with the Claim Solace, or I assume with any overhand weapon, and you have the Succubus Soul out, the Succubus Soul will count you hitting every single one of his individual segments as like as a separate hit. So instead of just getting 5 health for a hit, you'll get like you'll get 5 health for every time it thinks you've hit something new. For every like segment of it you hit. So you can rack up like 30 health per hit if the serpent is all like coiled up, which he sometimes is. But again, I don't know if that's necessarily worth going for. I feel like you're better off just avoiding the serpent as much as you can and sticking in the safe spots that are dictated by the spike attack. Because the spike attack is constantly telling you that there are places that you can and cannot be, and that's kind of what dictates your positioning throughout the entire fight, because it's so frequent. Listen to this. I fucking love this music, too. What a happy ending. Yeah, the Chaos fight, because that's what that boss is at the end. The Chaos fight is very interesting. I think it's a well-designed boss fight. It feels harrowing and dangerous, and, like, just unpredictable enough that you're never 100% comfortable, but not so unpredictable that you're just gonna, like, get randomly killed by bullshit. Like, there's smart ways to play around even a worst-case scenario in that fight, in my opinion, anyway. So, that's Aria of Sorrow. Time for the million-dollar question now that I've played the whole trilogy. Which game in the GBA trilogy is the best? Well, it may not surprise you to hear my answer if you've been watching my other videos. I'm just going to say it here. I think Harmony of Dissonance is better than this. And I'm fairly sure this amounts to heresy in the wider Castlevania community, but as cool as Aria of Sorrow has lots of things in it that are really, really awesome. I love the Topless Witches. I love the Julius fight is incredible. Absolutely breathtaking. Some of the music is absolutely breathtaking, but it has all these things that are tripping you up, that are interrupting the flow of gameplay that makes, like, the early style of Castlevania so special. The constant forward momentum. It's like, it's being interrupted by talking, it's being interrupted by farming. Yes, you can skip the talking, yes, you can skip a lot of the farming if you don't care about 100% map completion, but I didn't have to worry about any of those hypotheticals when I was playing Harmony of Dissonance, do you know what I mean? Like, at no point did the game tell me you cannot go any further or you cannot get access to this tool unless you spend a random span of time killing a certain enemy. And I think it is worth noting that in order to get the best ending for this game, you do have to farm the Flame Demon and Succubus souls. Like, you get the Bat soul for free, but you have to farm the other two, so it's not like you can say the farming is totally optional. It's not. You have to farm for those souls. It's not the worst farm in the world, but it's there, and it's, I would argue, mandatory. Hammer has a rocket launcher. So that's my overall, but all that, those complaints aside, game is amazing. I would totally recommend it. Really awesome. Lots of things going in its favor. I'll be taking a little bit of a break after this, no videos for a while, and then when I'm coming back, I'll be getting into the DS trilogy, and boy, oh boy, do I have some opinions about that. Keep Earth